Apologies, I didn't realize we had one pass.
I kind of looked up for it's after 9 o'clock.
Good morning. Kevin Day, Chair of the Custer County Board of County Commissioners. Today is April 29th, 2022. And I will call to order this meeting of the Board of County Commissioners at 9:05. If you would silence your cell phones at this time. And if you would stand and join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll get a roll call.
Commissioner Kevin Day,
Present.
Commissioner Bill Kanda,
Here.
Commissioner Tom Fowler,
Present.
County Attorney Clint Smith,
Present via Zoom.
Deputy Clerk Peggy Miller, present.
Okay, and if we could get an audience introduction, we'll start right over here. Cliff Brown.
Charles Cox.
Tim Agnew.
Braden Wilson.
Dorothy Carsten.
Okay, and then if we speak later, we'll have you identify yourself, and the same with anybody online that speaks later. Any amendments to the agenda?
None from me.
No, sir.
Okay. We have no minutes. Commissioner items, Mr. Flower.
Thank you, sir. Let's see. I did on April the 14th attended the Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District meeting via Zoom. And on the 19th, I attended the weed board meeting that was here in the commissioner room. Nothing real earth shattering out of either one of those two meetings. We also had our monthly opioid Region 15 consortium meeting. That was a Zoom meeting as well. We are meeting in person in Salida to talk about distribution of funds. I think that meeting is I think that's the 20th.
That's what sticks in my mind too, Tom.
Yeah. I didn't find it, but were you planning on going up to that meeting? We might talk about
Sharing the right. Yes.
let's see. Dr. Brown, myself, Patrick Fiore, Stacy Shaw, I think are the voting members of that representing Custer County. Then I also attended on the 22nd of April a Custer County Recycles meeting. That is the name of the recycling program that came out of the RREO grant. So that's what they've named it. Moving ahead with that, the baler is scheduled to be here on the week of the 16th of May and making arrangements for equipment to offload that and get it into the building. The staking was done for the electrical for that building. And we're waiting on power company to do their work. And I think things are progressing pretty well for that whole deal. So
Got a quick update there since you brought it up. Let's see, you're talking about landfill power.
yes,
Yeah, I talked to Brian last night. He'll be here later, but Sanger de Crystal wants $10K to put it in. They gave him the invoice.
So we can pay that and they'll install
Let's see, then I also had a Zoom conference meeting with two people from CDOT concerning the Central Front Range Transportation Region Grant project that we're involved in, and we have a resolution to speak to that today. So I could talk more about that. Then on the 26th, High Country Recycles met, and I attended that meeting as well. They met down in the Westcliff Library. So they, of course, from the whole COVID thing, they've not been meeting very frequently. So it was interesting to sit through that meeting. And then, of course, yesterday we had the Justice Center meeting here as well. So that's pretty much it, sir.
All righty, thank you. Mr. Kanda.
Yeah, Justice Center meeting was a good one. Good start. We'll have to talk at some point how to get a bulletin board up or a billboard up to say how we're going to proceed here and keep it going with different options. Thought that was a good start. A couple things are coming up. Mountain Connect is on 23 to 25 of this month, and I'm going with our broadband team. And after that, we'll schedule the broadband PMR for June. Figure out when we're going to start with to do that with the county and the two towns. CCI also has a summer conference coming up that we ought to be thinking about, and I think we ought to get maybe Vince over there for some of the road and bridge discussions. We've been, we were negligent last year and didn't get Gary over there in time, and maybe somebody else. It might be worth. They're having a how do you promote the county kind of stuff, and maybe it'd be worth having Reggie attend that day as well. PIO, just something to think about. Take a look at the agenda; it's on there, and it's butts up right against our board meetings. So we'll have to leave that afternoon and head over. And next day is when the actual agenda starts. Let's see. I mentioned some time ago that we'll put a bid together on the roof of this building. We thought we'd submit that for one of the senators to put in their deal. I think I'll bring it up. We'll need to talk about what we need to do with this roof. And I think I'll put it on the agenda for Wednesday so we can take a look at that bid and then decide what we want to do to move forward, whether we want to repair it now, when. We need a discussion on it rather than letting it sit. So I'll work that. I mentioned the landfill. Brian will be here to fill us in on the details on that. And let's see what else. Pretty significant thing. The state legislature is trying to push collective bargaining on a mandate, on an unfunded mandate on all the counties. So all the counties took a strong stand, whether they were Democratic or Republican. Nobody wants to do that. And so that was pushed very hard by Action 22. We put together a video that went to all the state legislatures. And what's important for our county to understand is the impact just on our little county. We have 91 employees. Our budget is $9 million roughly. Half of that is the operation. That's $4.5 million we spend on operating, doing all the things we do here to support both road and bridge, housing, HR, human resources, et cetera. The other half, 4.6, is salaries just for the 91 employees. And so the impact of putting that on and implementing it is the unionizing cost is a one-time cost of about 1.5 million we'd have to come up with. And the annual cost would be about $200,000 annually, and a loss in productivity because of other actions you do during the year for the unionization stuff is another $100,000. That's $300,000 more a year. It'd bankrupt us. We can't do that. And the other counties, we had 5 counties. Big county, El Paso is the biggest one, second biggest one in the state. And I didn't realize that they're bigger than Denver, 740,000 people. We're on that 5 people that we did the interviews with. Pueblo County, Los Animas, and Fremont and us. So we went from the small to the big, and every one of them showed how that will adversely mean that we would lose and the counties would lose programs. We'd have to stop and do things that we had planned to do, need to do, vital services. So it's important for everybody to understand that. You'll see some of that. I think it's going to be defeated. It's out on the street. They put it out. It's going to be voted on in the next few days, I think. So we'll see. Stay tuned.
All right.
So that's all I got.
Okay. I won't. You guys hit the Justice Center pretty good. Probably one of the bigger, I got a couple of things. A smaller one, I guess, would be I'm reaching out again to the TV stations, trying to get responses for them on this taking over the TV towers is kind of like pulling teeth. One of them is still responding to me, and he says, I'll get back to you by the end of the week. And it doesn't happen.
Pueblo or Springs?
Springs. So that's channel 11 to channel 13.
Mm-hmm.
They were very enthusiastic up front, but I don't know if their boards are pulling the reins back in or what the deal is. One of them is still responding to me. The other one hasn't even responded the last few times I've tried to contact him. So
Pesty County.
still trying, see what we can do there. Still attending the meetings down at the Florence Fire Protection District and just keeping our face in there. I believe they are interviewing at this time for a second crew. And then at some time here in the future, then they'll be wanting to talk with us and about providing service to the eastern edge of the county. And then I wanted to, I think all of us got the updates that Jackie sent to us in regards to the changes in the zoning regs. And so I think we need to probably meet and discuss those, whether we want to move forward with those or if we have any changes we would like to see. And then then we'll need to get some public hearings scheduled on that. So I don't know if you guys would like to set a date to
Sure.
meet. Do we want to throw that on an agenda or do we want to meet specifically to discuss that?
Yeah, we'll have to, I think.
Agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. So we will get that on, do we want to put that mid-month? Or do we want to do that on Tuesday or
We
Wednesday?
got Wednesdays pretty open.
Probably ought to look at doing it the first of the month and then try to hold a hearing mid-month or something.
Okay. I would throw it in your court, Dorothy, check which agenda has more room and we can throw it on either Tuesday or Wednesday.
Wednesdays, I believe, are pretty open.
Okay, why don't we do that? I appreciate it.
You know, we're under a moratorium until we make a decision on those
Yeah,
resolutions.
so we should.
Changes, so I don't think we ought to postpone it too long.
Gotta go quick.
Okay, so let's do that on Wednesday and then so go through those again, see if you guys have any changes you want to see and we can discuss that on Wednesday.
Yeah, we need to get that released as soon as we can.
Yeah.
People's livelihoods are hanging there.
Okay. Do you have anything for us today, sir?
Yeah, a little bit. Let's see, I think since the last meeting in Wetmore, I put Vince in touch with the woman who lives up on in Boneyard Park on County Road 265 about working to get all that road base off her property that's been pushed there over the years. He was going to work up a written plan with her and go over it to be sure she was satisfied. I think it's going to require taking down something like 1,700 feet of fence in order to get the road base cleared off her property and then get the fence back up. But anyway, Vince is working on that now. I received an email from Judge Hunter yesterday following the Justice Center meeting, asking me to do some research concerning the requirements of small counties to provide jails. She actually looked like she'd done a lot of the research already, but I'll get busy on that and get something to you as soon as I can. And I guess I kind of kept you all up to date on what's going on. Had some issues with my broken hip, the one I broke back before Christmas. There's some complications, and it looks like I'm probably going to have some more surgery, but that hasn't been determined yet. But it's kind of hard for me to get around right now, and that's why I'm participating via Zoom. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Can I ask him a question?
You may.
Hey, Clint, are you going to be around after the meeting sometime? When can I call you? I got a couple things I need to ask you about.
I guarantee I am not going anywhere. I can
You
barely
were
get
going
out
to
of
go
my
to the doctor.
recliner.
That's what I'm wondering if you're going to.
No, I got a doctor's appointment next week to find out exactly what they're proposing to do. So I'll be here.
Okay. Then I had a question for the two of you. We all got an invite to the Blossom Parade in Canyon, and I haven't got to be sitting there or going down the street on a float waving to everybody. Did you see that?
No,
I did not.
Yeah,
You might be the only one that got it.
I hope not. Because I was going to see who was going.
Actually, I have not seen that.
You hadn't seen it? I'll have to pull it up. I'll go find it and I'll send it out, and maybe somebody needs to represent Custer County. It was to the mayors and the county commissioners, et cetera, just to go down and say hi. Okay.
and I had a thought, if I may, pertaining to a meeting yesterday afternoon about the Justice Center. I don't know why this hit me, but I tried to catch you on the way out last night and I missed you, but we were talking about maybe putting a sign over there on the property to say the future side of the Justice Center. And you mentioned, and I agreed with you that, well, we have certain restrictions on signage. Well, we don't have anything to say about that. That's in the town of Westcliff.
Oh,
So our county sign ordinances are irrelevant.
Yeah, they have bigger size signs in town.
there you go.
Hopefully, but yeah, I don't know why I thought of that, but I thought, oh yeah, that's right. That's not county.
I just remembered that we did have some, so,
Yeah.
but good point on that. Dorothy, do you have anything
I
for
don't
us?
have anything today.
I'm disappointed. All right, that brings us to the point where we have public comment. So if anybody would like to bring anything up that is not on the agenda, feel free to do so at this time. And let me look. Don't see any hands up online.
How many online?
I'm showing 12. Some of those are internal. So. Okay. Any unfinished business?
None here.
No, sir.
Okay, none here either. New business, that brings us to our first item is consideration of accounts payable and the out of cycle checks report. So that would bring you up, sir.
If I can copy tethered here.
So are you want to discuss something before we make a motion to accept it, or do you want us to?
I have nothing to add. I sent the reports and so
Hello, sir.
what is in the reports is what's in the report.
Well, I move we accept the accounts payable. Just so we can discuss it with you.
I would second that.
Thank you for sending those early.
Yeah, that was,
I think we'll.
that was pretty risky on your part.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly where we'd like to be. So not the risky piece, but yeah, early. So yeah, we're finally kind of getting into a groove here. And as far as when to get payroll done and everything. And so just systematizing, and hopefully that'll be the norm as opposed to the exception moving forward.
Well, the first 14 pages were some of the most interesting reading I've ever seen.
It is, it's kind of like financial stuttering.
I can't believe it. I kept thinking, well, when are we going to get to the general fund?
Yeah.
I didn't say anything.
Anything else?
I do have some questions and or comments, if that's appropriate at this time.
Please do.
On page 24,
Okay.
I would have expected to see our elevator permit, and then ended up being $1,400 worth of elevator expenses. Were you privy to what kind of repairs was done to that elevator, or?
So on page 24, I see the 969. Is that the number?
Mhm. And then we always have to have it certified. That was for $30, but
They were down there doing that when we had the meeting. That was their annual checkup, I think.
yeah, I didn't see anybody, but I didn't know if you.
See what notes I have here.
Let's see, maybe I transferred a number wrong. Maybe.
$400 for the inspection in what, top of the page.
Oh, yeah, I was missing that one. Yeah, so 400,000, yeah, right at $1,400.
400 plus money.
So they must do an inspection and then charge us $30 to fill out the certificate.
We'll grease it.
I've also found it interesting that the Division of Oil thought they need to be involved in elevator inspections. I just wanted to highlight that as we speak, my friend.
See,
So they must have drained and changed out the oil. Looks like they added 5 gallons of hydraulic oil.
Number clean.
I've got drain hose, drain bar,
Right.
drop key, pig mats.
Yeah, I don't. I was gonna go there, but you're welcome. Yeah, I'm assuming that was for a drip pan, basically, for catching any oil, so.
Yeah.
And then on page 28, the infamous.
Yes. So this is, it turns out they had
Page 28, district.
the office of the district attorney. They thought that we had missed a payment in January. We went back and did not think we had. And then we found out that we had missed a payment in January. So that's why there's 2 here. One is for January's payment, and one is for May's payment.
Dang, they caught it.
Yeah. You know, try to sneak it by there. Probably not a smart thing to do with a
Yeah,
Attorney.
For the prosecutor.
Yeah.
Well, she had her hands full.
Yeah.
She wasn't worried about missing a payment. She was worried about trying to get a trial lined up and going, I'm sure. So interesting enough, as I'm sure you're well aware of, that district attorney dismissed that case. And it's very more few
Yeah.
with prejudice, so I'm sure they're going to try him again. But so, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I assumed that one was for January and one was for May, but they both said January and May.
Correct.
So, and then on page 30, statewide internet portal authority, SIPA. I didn't know who, if that was the sheriff or if that was.
It is. I think that is their
It's their
Their
workspace
Google.
stuff.
that they
Yeah.
started.
And so I'm assuming that they had a grant. So they must be paying SIPA. Because the vendor was SIPA, right?
Correct.
Have expected grant or to be SIPA and the vendor to be somebody else is why I'm asking. But we must have paid SIPA that amount.
That is the Google Workspace
Yeah.
license and migrator, which is paid to SIPA.
Okay. So it's for the license, not the software. Okay. Let's see. Page 54, I had a note here.
I have to stop sending this so early if there's this many.
Well, mostly it
Gives you way too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you if you were aware. If not, we could certainly ask Vince when he comes in for his staff report about this claim on that 2011 Ford. That's the first I was aware of it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
That was, I was aware of it. I remember now the exact situation on that.
Whose claim was it? It was whose claim?
Road and Bridge.
That's what I thought.
It was similar to the one that happened to the truck from Wetmore. It was damage down the side of the pickup.
Mhm.
And you'll have to forgive me, I do not remember the specifics of it. Visit with him later.
Then really I had a question more probably for more in human services. When I saw these Medicaid transportation expenses, which I know are covered by their funding, just made me wonder who does all of that. Those are a lot of trips. Whether they're contracting it out third party or whether somebody in their office is doing it. I suspect it's third party, but I don't really know that.
Mhm.
So
I believe it was the Rotary, was it not?
they're not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming these names are redacted because we're paying the individuals directly.
Correct.
So maybe they're driving themselves and getting mileage reimbursement.
Yeah, I'm not totally familiar on how it works, but I do know those are confidential, at least
Yeah.
the recipients.
I can't imagine somebody in her office literally driving those folks.
That's not the way I understand it, yeah.
Those are all the questions or comments I had. Thank you.
Okay.
You didn't see a new truck for your office or anything?
No, you're good. I hit it well then.
It's under the county health thing, right? Hidden in
Yeah,
there.
it's exactly.
Oh my gosh.
We good?
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Okay, those in favor of approving the accounts payable report signify by saying aye.
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 And for Peggy's. You need that total number,
The total number for,
accounts payable that we're approving,
sure.
485,636.52.
Okay. Let's go to our out cycle here.
There's a couple of things that I'd want to point out. One is the Vail grant there at the beginning. So from what I understand, that's just the money that was not used from last year. And when I got it, it was something that needed to be paid back. So I went ahead and cut that one. Let's see, the Department of Revenue and Empower Retirement, as well as Social Security Administration, the first one there, are all a check that needed to be caught up out of after payroll had happened. The school district, that's the prom fund that went out. The second piece of that Social Security Administration is the Q4 tax penalty. And so I had received that and went ahead and got that paid. Just a quick update there. I went ahead and I called the IRS at that time too, to see again if there's anything we could do, and then to check on the status of that Form 843, which is an appeal for those penalties. And they had not yet had it in their system, the one that I had sent in February. And so I went ahead and paid this one to keep any more penalties from happening, and sent another Form 843 to make sure that I inundate them with as many letters as they do me. So that's, we'll see if it works at some point. I'll give them another call today. I have that on my calendar just to check in and see where things are at. So
Well, I had a question as we move along into the Visa
Yep.
credit card. The first, third, and fourth entries there, are those grants that we're paying that out of? I'm assuming they're obviously the Kids Council one is. I just didn't know about the workbooks and
those are all kids.
They're all
council,
kids
yeah.
council.
Yeah. First, third, and fourth. Yes.
okay.
Yeah. And that the only reason we have Visa here is because we reached our limit and people were needing to use it still. So I have an update for that, whether we want to talk about that now or wait until
Let's approve
another
this
time.
for-
Yeah, let's do that. Staff
Yeah.
report.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, for those that are concerned about it, their hope is on the way, at least something.
Good.
Yeah.
I would move we approve the out-of-cycle checks in the amount of $75,921.15.
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion?
And just quickly, if you don't mind, sir, out of the Fund 50, the expenditures for the 2 trailers for Custer County Recycles came out of that grant, the RRE. Which I'm assuming there must be some number on here that. How do we track whether it's grant money or general fund money?
So Fund 50 is capital improvement. So it wouldn't say specifically
Okay.
grant, but if you look there, that second string of numbers is the 4650. That's the landfill. And for what we budgeted this year, that is just grant money that, or it's just money from grants that we're planning to spend in that category. At some point, and I'll check with Sam on this when he comes to visit here next month, hopefully, there may be a fourth set of numbers that we could tie specifically to grants. And then if we ever needed to look up a specific grant, we would know this is everything that has to do with that grant based on that string of numbers. So just a thought as to what that might look
Nice
like.
way to attract, we're given $50,000 for a grant. It'd be nice to know where we stand
Right.
against that.
And it will help, we made a good move with like public health to have grants as the accounts. What we could then do is actually track what we're using within those grants. So we could still have our operating supplies, but we would know that it was from the X
X
grant.
or whatever.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll be able to get there for next year.
So as an example, then on the RREO grant,
Mhm.
I know that was put into Fund 50.
Mhm.
If we had Custer County Recycles established, let's say we get another grant, that would be deposited into Custer County Recycles or back into capital outlay.
Put it down, outlay 50.
If for this, we would probably put that in the capital outlay. Yeah, in the revenue side. In the revenue side of capital outlay.
You ought to be able to tag it like you're saying, and
Yeah.
keep track of each grant separately if you want.
Right.
I mean, QuickBook does that.
Yeah, it's not set up that way now, but I want to work with Sam to see how we could make that happen, because I think that would be very helpful moving forward.
Good. And I'm assuming this is the final payment on the fuel tank,
Yes, I believe so for airport. Yep.
which included delivery and setup.
Yep.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Oh,
Okay, those in favor of approving the out of cycle checks signify by saying aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
I think.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Can you get that number, Peggy? On that?
75,000 minus 21.
Brian.
That is correct.
Find out when he's out of cycle on the same crystal or not. I don't think so. For the power going into the landfill. Oh, he'll be here later.
Okay. Sounds good.
Talk to him.
Okay, next item up, consideration of the Custer County Recycles signage and signing of the Marion Baylor purchase contract.
Dory told me she was gonna be here this morning, so we might be earlier than she anticipated, but
Well, I looked at it and it looked like a lot of boilerplate, but it looked like a good Baylor contract. So I'll move that we accept this contract. And we can get it discussed.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor to accept the contract from Altitude Recycling Equipment. For the Marion Baylor. Any discussion?
Well, if you read the contract, you might have picked up that we had an error in section 1AA that has been corrected. I don't know if it's corrected on the copy that you gentlemen have.
Yes, it is only 30%.
It's 30%.
100 was put in there by mistake. So that was.
It all comes to 100 now.
And I did forward a copy of this contract to the attorney. Clint, would you like to speak to that? Altitude Recycling.
I looked it over. It looked fine to me. The only issue is whether it was all going to be paid within this fiscal year, and it is. So you're not committing any future Board of County Commissioners to make payments on it.
That is correct. The final payment will be made upon delivery of the baler itself, 10%.
That installation.
And that was Exhibit A, if you wanted to reference that. So I did talk to the delivery. I not that has to do with contract. I'll wait. Sorry.
And the sum of that contract, Peggy, is $130,200. Any other discussion at this time?
I'm good.
Anything from the floor? Okay. Not seeing anything there. All those in favor of approving the contract with Altitude Recycling Equipment signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. We'll get that signed here a little bit. Next item would be the consideration of the West Sidewalk Project resolution.
You speak to that.
You probably ought
Yes,
to
you
read
would,
it.
sir. I have it here in front of me if you'd like me to read it or if you would like to.
You're welcome to read it. Yeah.
Okay. Custer County Resolution number 22-18. Resolution of Custer County, a political subdivision of the state of Colorado, indicating support of applying for a CFR TPR grant for the reconfiguration of the county building west sidewalk. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners for Custer County has determined the need to reconfigure the sidewalk on the west side of the county building parallel to Highway 69 South. And whereas the Board of County Commissioners has made the decision to pursue grant funding via the current funding cycle of the Colorado Department of Transportation Multimodal Operations Fund, which is a $0 match grant for Custer County. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners believes it is in the best interest of the citizens of Custer County for safety and access to the county building to reconfigure the sidewalk. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners that the Board of County Commissioners support the effort to apply for the aforementioned grant and commit to moving this project forward by complying to the requirements of the grant application, which must be submitted to the Central Front Range Transportation and Planning Region Committee by June 3, 2022 via the CDOT portal. This resolution number 22-18 is approved and adopted this 29th day of April, 2022, if we do vote so.
Okay, I move we accept Custer County Resolution number 22-18 as presented. And I have a couple of questions.
I'll second it.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor to accept Custer County Resolution number 22-18. Discussion.
And a question, do we have to submit what we estimate the cost to be?
We do.
How's that? So what do you think it is? How come we don't have it on?
Well, we don't have a figure in this resolution because we don't have a figure. I spoke with CDOT. I've reached out to 3 different engineering firms just to see if I could sit down and have a conversation with them and try to come up with a rough estimate. But talking to Michelle at CDOT, she said, if you do not get that, the first posting of the application has to be May 6th. She said, just estimate that as best as you can. I talked to a couple of individuals that are in the concrete business. They threw out a figure, but I think we're looking at around 450 to 475,000. That's what I'll put in the first
I would think.
grant on the 6th if I don't
It's a lot of concrete.
get some kind of a response from the engineering firm. I reached out to the firm that did all of the ADA sidewalk work in West Cliff and haven't heard back from them either. I thought,
Langston, is that who they did?
no, he did the concrete work, but the engineering firm was out of North Star Engineering, which I will also indicate in that grant application that I've reached out to those, and they're aware of it. I've already talked to them, that I just haven't been able to get any response, So when I wrote this resolution, sent it to Clint and Kelly, thank goodness Kelly responded back and said I had to correct one of your typo mistakes, and instead of multimodal, I had spelled it multi-model. So I appreciated her catching that. We made those changes. So yeah, and we'll see how it goes. This is kind of a timing thing. This grant funding from the feds has been an annual thing, but of course they won't commit to that this effort will be funded next, not this project, but the whole multimodal thing will be funded next year. But they suggested that we not only apply for the engineering side of this grant, but apply for the project construction as well. They just said, apply for it all, don't wait and try to split it in half. So we'll see how it goes, but we have to present this in person June 6th, or June 3rd, that date. So I'll go to Salida and present.
So the application is due now, and then you got a month.
Yeah, there's 3 different postings. You have to post your initial application in their portal on May 6th. And then May 26th is another posting, and then June 3rd is the presentations. So we'll see how many presentations for grants there are. That may impact whether or not we get selected. The committee that's referenced here will actually do the vetting and review of the applications. So
I think you said it sounded pretty positive.
yeah, I mean, they're pretty upbeat about it. I got a little discouraged about it, and they said, no, don't weaken, man, stay strong, because it's a good project and it needs to be done. So that was CDOT that indicated that.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No, just so everybody understands that for the record, it's fixing the sidewalk beside us here so that when you open the door, you don't get door ripped off on the car, trying to get around it, and then trying to come up onto the sidewalk, you don't slip and fall on the dirt, because a lot of people cut across. So it'll be a whole different, that's why there's so much concrete involved. Got to cut in, move it over.
Yeah, and after, I should probably share this, after my meeting with CDOT last week, we kind of came to the conclusion that maybe the best approach is going to be come back almost to the grass line, or a little this way towards the building from the grass line, put a retaining wall in and make 1 10-foot sidewalk all the way down there at the elevation of the curb. And then ADA slope the 2 sidewalks coming to this building. Are we going to have enough lineal distance to get 2% slope? That I don't know.
2% put you over on the
That
other
might
side of the
be
road.
Methodist Church.
Yeah, totally. We don't have to worry about your doors, just people rolling off the sidewalk. We got to be careful.
So without hearing, if I don't hear from engineering, I'll submit 475 and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Yeah, and then make sure it's, how do you say it? It's a bid that could change due to cost and design changes.
Right. Yeah, and that's
So it can't be firm.
I've already written that into the grant application itself. And then there's some other supporting documents, of one of which is the requirement of the grant is to provide documentation that the local government entity supports, either by resolution or minutes. So that's why we're dealing with this resolution today. I've got an aerial and some other photographs that I'll also submit to that.
So do we need an estimate number in this before we approve it?
Nope.
Does it look good from a
Just that
legal
we
point of view? Talk to Clint.
That we were willing to support the project moving forward. Yeah, and the reason, Commissioner Canada, that the dollar amount was not critical for this resolution is because we're a zero-based matching grant county. And so CDOT said, don't worry about the dollars in your resolution, just get it in there that you support.
That we support.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not gonna cost us anything.
Okay.
Anything from the floor? Hands up. Okay, those in favor of adopting Custer County Resolution number 22-18, please signify by saying aye.
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 And then if we can sign that today, we'll get Kelly, I think she wants the original. And then I'll include a copy of it in the grant application.
Next up, we have consideration of funding the ARPA applications. Over to you, sir.
Good day to you,
Good morning, how are you?
Kevin.
Good to see you.
Mr. ARPA.
Yes, Mr. ARPA. Have I ever told you guys that this chair reminds me of the electric chair?
The
The US military detention facility in Leavenworth. But I don't see any cords to it, so I'll have a
You're
seat.
safe.
Yes. Let's see, I sent to you all electronically, but here's a hard copy of the criteria that we are working with, as well as then what we might call the clean recommendations. By clean meaning it's anonymous, but introduce myself for those on the distance meeting. I'm Andrew Zeller. I'm with the County Commissioners ARPA Committee, ARPA American Rescue Plan. We also have with us Alma Golden, who's on the committee, and Marcy Gregg and Carol Weihinger. And then Trinity Huffman wasn't able to make it because of his responsibilities. We want to thank you all for the trust that you've placed in us to perform the task that you gave us to make recommendations for the ARPA funds. We realize that this is a significant trust. We know that there is no such thing as free money. Somebody's paying for it. And we realize then that we've got a significant responsibility to take care of these funds and make careful recommendations to you all. We've come to the point where we are making recommendations to you. And I want to note that the process, we believe, has been a positive process. The committee worked well together, and the results that we have come up with are unanimous results. Doesn't mean that in some of the little details we all agreed, but
You worked them out.
we worked them out, and the recommendations that we're presenting to you, we're presenting to you unanimously. And we're thankful for that. In the places where we didn't agree with some details, we were able to certainly come to a conclusion and with respect for one another's opinion. The first document that I gave to you was the criteria that we used to handle these funds with care. And we had these 14 different criteria. They are a combination of both the ARPA criteria set by the federal government and the objectives of the ARPA program, along with what we would count as our county and community values and interests, so that we made decisions based on these criteria. We received 51 applications. Trying to get some of the remaining grant money of $870,000 or so dollars. Of those 51 applications, we regret to say that there were 19 that we declined. Not that these were not from honorable citizens or worthy causes, but they just didn't fit the criteria. There were 32 that we approved. And of those 32 that we approved, 12 of them we approved partially. The reason that we approved them just partially was first because there was limited funds. We couldn't afford everything that was applied for. But also then there were portions, I should say, of the applications that maybe didn't fit the criteria, and other portions that did for one request. And so we would then just, we make a recommendation for a partial granting. The applications came from a wide spectrum of our community, from individuals, from families, from small businesses, large businesses, Custer County School, and government programs, agencies. What I've presented to you here is what we believe you were asking from us. And if you're needing more detail, I have more detail available for you. We are not interested in trying to keep from you any details that you're wanting to have, but we understood that you wanted a report, something like this, that did I hand that out to you?
Yeah, we've got it.
That has a summary of the request, which is somewhat anonymous, although you can probably figure out a few of them for sure. And then the reason that we are recommending them based on our criteria, and then the amount that we are recommending that you grant the applicants. In the far left-hand column, you see a number system of A1, et cetera, B1, 2, 3, C1, 2, 3. The A stands for household applications. The B stands for applications of less than $10,000. And the C stands for applications of more than $10,000. So we have before you our recommendations. The total here you see on page 4 comes to $867,267.39. This is approximately $10,000 less than the amount we understand we have. We're leaving $10,000 of wiggle money. That's an official term.
Is it more than 10K or less than that?
10,000 of wiggle money. We thought it would be a good idea to not limit ourselves to just right down to the dollar or penny. I have no doubt that when some of the dust is cleared from the whole distribution process, the committee is willing to get back together and make a recommendation for funds that are either not used or the leftover 10,000, or maybe you want to go ahead and just decide what to do with those funds yourself. So my recommendation to you all is what I've presented to you here, to use this as a means to determine the grants from the ARPA funds. What questions do you have?
Before we do that, let me make a motion to accept your recommendation for distributing these funds as you presented to the tune of $8,160,267.39.
So that's 860, 267, 39. Peggy was right. Okay, I have a motion. I would second that, and we can go into discussion.
I'd like to just address specifically the motion. I wasn't going to second it because I'd rather go through this process. I've got another, it's not a concern, it's just a point. And that is, we only have half of this money deposited. And so I'll probably vote no on the motion because of that, because we don't have the rest of the money yet.
Or I could amend it because some of this can be pending the, why don't we do that? That's the best.
I think that would be,
Because I meant to do that and you're right. That we get that money, what, in a week or whenever?
We don't know.
When's it?
My understanding is the end of May.
Yeah, the end of May. So some of this would have to be funded as available.
So, and that would bring up the point that we would need to be able to prioritize somehow the ones that would be needing funds before the second half dropped. And because I'm sure some of them are under a tight constraint,
So is it-
some others are not.
You have a possible.
The majority of the applicants, I understand, can wait probably until the end of May. There's certainly a lot of interest and people are wanting to know because they've got an interest in it. There are one or two that probably should not wait more than another week or so.
Yeah, I know.
Because of matching funds.
I was going to bring that up with the
That
discussion.
would be lost.
Because there is a matching fund request.
Mhm.
so I wonder if you could share with us the 12, by number, of course, that are partial funding, first of all, if you don't mind. Can we go through that list?
Okay,
I've got,
you don't see that it's on this report here, that it's partial, but I can tell you which ones.
and before you do that,
Are
Andrew, if I
partial.
may, Mr. Chair, I added 3 more columns to the, 3 more columns to the spreadsheet. And so my question across the board would be, which ones were partial, which ones did the committee actually interview, and then which ones are in priority from the committee. So if we could address those 3 things, I would sure appreciate that.
The ones that we actually interviewed in the committee, many applicants were interviewed individually by different committee members. And I probably could not come up with that list because a lot of that happened informally. And then the committee members brought that information to the table. But the ones that we interviewed particularly as a committee. Now, let's see if I can, you're wanting to know by B1 or B2 and et cetera.
Mhm.
And so the answer to that committee, they were in the C category. And it was C3 we interviewed in committee. And C4 we interviewed in committee. And actually C17 also was combined with C4 because it was the same leadership.
17.
I don't think it was C4, it was the, was it C4? I think it was the housing for the. That's right. Okay,
C4 and C17, C4 was,
I knew it was C4, but I didn't think it was C17. I think it was,
C17, they were there at the same time.
was it?
We didn't talk about this.
No, it was the one where they wanted the housing, which was, let's see.
C18.
Okay, that's wrong too? Okay.
C18, we interviewed personally outside of committee.
Okay.
Many of them, like I said, we did outside of committee.
Right. Yeah. So C17 was interviewed in the committee or no?
Not in a whole committee.
Okay. So just those 2, C4 and C3.
Well, In regard to C17, didn't we
There was a
consider?
discussion about that during that time, is it related?
Yeah.
But we didn't go through that committee, that funding request at the same time. But since they both are related to the school, we had school leadership there. There was some discussion of it, not a full evaluation.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, in regard to those that we funded partially,
Before you do that,
yes,
did you not interview can we say that either single interview was done or committee interview was done on all these or not?
no, there were some that we
You
didn't.
just looked at the application and did. So
Yeah.
how many of those were?
I'd say half. Half
Look
of them.
at how they filled it out,
Mhm.
whether it met the criteria.
Yeah, and being a small community, we know a lot of these people.
Yeah.
We know a lot of the projects. And within the committee we had, I don't think there was anybody who applied who we didn't have a personal contact with of some sort.
Okay.
So we had a significant amount of trust.
Mhm.
And it also depended upon the quality of the application too, how thoroughly the different questions were
Whether
answered.
they're serious about it or not.
So partial, you were gonna
Yeah.
address partial funding, okay.
To go through the B column, B9, we approved partially at about 55%. B13, we approved partially at, again, about 55%. C3, we approved partially at approximately 35%. C3,
C3,
C.
Charlie 3.
Okay, thank you.
C4, we approved partially at approximately 30%. I'm giving an approximate percentage. I could give you the exact figures, but you'll get the picture with a percentage, I think. C13, we approved partially at approximately 60%. C14, we approved partially at 2/3%.
66%.
66.3%. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Approximately.
2/3%. Okay. C15, we approved partially at 80%. C17, we approved partially at 55%. C18, we approved partially at 50%.
Backups, you said, see, what was your one before that?
C17,
I got that. Then what was the next one?
the previous before, you mean?
No.
The one after that?
Yeah.
C18, approximately at 50%.
50% is what I missed.
And C20, we approved partially at 25%. C21, approved partially at about 30%. When I say approved, we passed it as a committee and we're bringing it to the recommendation. We haven't.
You're
approved-
recommending.
We haven't.
Approved for recommend. Yes.
Understood.
Got it.
C2 as well.
C2, thank you. If I missed that, we approved at about 70%.
Then, and we talked about it a little bit, but I'd like a little more clarification on by number, the applications that you felt were in need of priority,
Okay,
if you can do that. Or do you
Yeah,
need-
there's really only one that has really come to the surface. The committee may know of others.
Well, I think, yes, A4. his kind of deadline was March 31st. I think obviously he's surviving because it's way past.
Okay, this is an individual who is getting some retraining for a new job because he's lost his old job due to COVID. Thank you for that, Marcy. And then the other one that we're recommending is a B11 as one that needs to be done sooner than later because of matching funds that need to be accessed.
And as far as you know, those are the only critical ones.
Yes. How about anything more, Carol?
I might add C3 to that.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, because the possibility of losing an opportunity.
I think C1, because some of the money that they asked for, they already some had to use, which they weren't expecting to use until the money came.
Which one again?
C1.
Okay.
That gives 4 priorities that have an approximately, that would almost exhaust the funds that you have
Let's add those 4 up
in the bank right now.
because you got one of them. C1's 138.
C3.
I think, doesn't the bank have about 360? I think the bank has about $360,000.
You said 370, I think. Or did you say that?
We're really not sure.
That comes to $349,281.99.
Yeah, so that's just a few dollars.
It fits.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's right about there, but
So I guess I would like to go through these individually. If we want to start with the priorities, and I guess the real question is, do we feel like we need to split this process in 2? Deal with the priority ones first and then the remaining ones, or do you want?
What do you want to accomplish, Tom? What do you?
Well, I think if the committee feels the priorities are important enough, then we need to address those. That's my personal opinion.
I don't have a problem prioritizing. That makes sense.
The easiest ones to address are the Bs. Because they're $10,000 or less, and I put your priority can be first, but those are the ones that can be addressed.
Well, what are we addressing? Are we addressing whether they need to be prioritized?
No,
Well, then what are we addressing?
just the funding. But I mean, if you want to go by prioritize, but I said if we're just looking at this whole list, the 10,000 and less are probably the easiest to go through one at a time. Because
if I could just ask
But
the committee members here a question. One of you mentioned that C1 you thought was a priority, and who was that you thought C1 was a priority?
Well, because some of the money that was requested in their application, they had to use already, and they had to go out and find funding from, I think, their board to get it through. So I would think if I was a board member.
You'd be glad they had no. And I guess my thought about a priority is something that would then be actually lost if is not funded within the next 30 days.
Okay, I don't know about that.
And I'm not sure that
That would
fit there. And if that helps, I think it's very important that they get their funding sooner
and C3
than later. But
so C3s, you can.
C3 could be that the opportunity could be lost if not secured.
So let's in order
So
to
you want to mark C3
do this.
as well?
So we're going to what are we discussing? We're going to discuss the prioritized ones that you are recommending to see whether they're whether they should be prioritized or not. What are we doing?
Actually, I'm trying to answer the question of what would be a priority project that we'd want to fund sooner than later.
Okay. In-house.
When we don't have the full funds yet to
Right, that's what I want to hear.
fund everything. I don't know how to work that out, actually. I know which one I could say, yep, this is the ones we'd prioritize. Because actually, we could tell you why they're the priority. And it's up to you guys then to say, yeah, we want to fund just these
Let me look
3
at
or
it.
4, or we want to go ahead and vote on the whole packet.
Let's take a reverse look at it. Can let's say one can't wait for sure. Do we know that for sure?
Yes.
Okay, so there's one that we know has to be funded now. Of all the rest, can they wait till May 30 to June 1st or not? That's a better way to look at it. We don't have to waste everybody's time. If they all can wait.
Possibly, yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you don't accept our recommendation,
Right.
the date
Well,
doesn't make anything difference.
But why wouldn't we accept your recommendation? How do we determine whether we think it's a good recommendation or not? Because you guys just told us you all spent a lot of time.
The reason that they gave to us for recommendation as presented.
Yeah.
That's why I don't know of,
Or answers to our
Right.
questions
yeah.
So,
may have an impact on that.
so we have time to do that.
Can
I
I
don't
make a
know if I
recommendation that
would-
we consider doing a little bit different? Maybe do fund the ones that are time sensitive. Go ahead and take care of any that are time sensitive. And then everything else, you do a proportional funding. If you have $300,000 and we were really only going to, and they're gonna have $800,000 and everybody gets 3/8 of their requested amount until the rest comes in. And that would allow everyone to have at least a
At start
partial
on it.
partial funding at this point in time and complete the funding at the end of May or the 1st of June.
That's okay.
And that eliminates, the competition for who's more important than the others, because we are bringing these to you in good faith that they're strong applicants from our community.
And I think I would like to make sure that we take care of the ones that are in dire need. I don't know personally if I would want to visit each and every line on this.
I don't think so.
Because that's what we entrusted these guys to do for us.
Right.
And that's,
So you wouldn't have any questions about any of these beyond what the documentation is we've been provided?
I would take the same.
I would think that they've furnished us with the criteria that they used. They've got 14 specific things that they used to develop this. They went through a pretty, I guess you could even say, long process of vetting these for us. That's what we tasked them to do. And I would be willing to accept the work that they did on our behalf.
I feel differently, but okay.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that as well.
And
that would be my feeling.
And my feeling's the same, and that's why we have them. And I think based on what I've seen, I think you've done a great job doing that. I like the idea of hitting the one that we really need to get done first. And and maybe that's the way we attack it. Take a look at that. And if there's others that we need to think that are in, like we use Kevin's words, dire straits, or if we fund all of them partially, like you said, Alma, maybe we can consider that.
Well, Andrew, I don't think the only one that needs to be funded right away is the
Matching grant.
B11.
Yes, I mean, dire straits is a pretty strong term for the rest of them when we're talking about a month. And then if we don't get the money, then we have to reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
But
That'd probably be the best way.
B11, definitely, we want to get that money to them to get additional funding back. Other than that, I think we're gonna have to.
What's your understanding, commissioners?
Well,
in
my
regard to-
understanding is, because I've been watching this pretty close and the TV news has been strong on the ARPA money that's making the headlines all over the country because they're using it for a lot of other things now, other than ARPA criteria means. It's going to be funded. That 400 additional thousand, I have no doubt will, but just in case, it's nice to have that in abeyance. I don't think you waste a lot of time now in that month. You could probably do a quick priority. You don't have to nitpick it until we know exactly what we're getting. But that's my feeling.
One idea is that you could make a motion that you approve these recommendations pending its funding, and then you could release the information to the applicants, and they know that they're waiting for that
Right.
second installment of funds until they're going to be able to get the funds.
Yeah, and I would withdraw my motion, and that's what my point. I would have put that back in pending funding.
And that could be one motion, and then just a separate, simple motion before it concerning B11. A B11 motion, and then everything else motion that includes a pending.
So the C3 wasn't, I had it marked initially as the priority, but that's not it.
C3 had it.
That was not a.
That could be an
It was
opportunity
partial.
lost. That could be an opportunity lost.
It could be.
C3 could be. So
It's not
C3 is
as time
partial.
sensitive as B11.
So what I'm hearing,
They don't have a month.
There's no way to tell.
Till the funding's full.
It could be that if they knew that they were approved for it, they could maybe secure the opportunity. But
Well, yeah.
Well, and especially if we go ahead with Elma's thought and partially fund everybody with this chunk of money. Fully fund the 11 and then partially fund everybody else.
I'm wondering if that. Just personal thinking here, thinking out loud. Might get me in trouble sometime. If it would be better to fund conditionally rather than give everybody a nickel instead of a dollar.
Yeah, I think so too, because they may not be able to take advantage of
I know
it.
that's not an accurate
It's not
analogy, but
bookkeeping. That's a good point. Yeah.
gets the point across.
because then if the other half doesn't drop for some reason, then we all have just a little bit of money, but not enough to do us any good.
Right.
Is my thinking on that. I think I would like to see us go with, if we can figure out what actually is the priority, if it's B11 or if it's B11 and C3. And
Just
vote on that and then vote on the others contingent upon the other money coming in. Your thoughts? You got it?
Well, you're not gonna like to hear them, but
That's all
I've
right.
gotta be honest here. I just can't imagine us throwing a blanket over all these applications and voting on them with one vote. To me, that's insane, unless we talk about each one before we do that. I've got all kinds of questions. And I'm surprised that you guys don't.
Comfortable. I've seen this before. I've operated like this. This is but intimately, I've talked with the committee.
You have?
Yeah, I have.
Hmm.
I understand it, but because I cared enough to follow the ARPA stuff and talk to what the process was. We didn't get any details. So I'm comfortable with what they did. And that's why we chartered them rather than us doing it and reinventing it. Now,
Yeah, I mean, I
way that should be.
certainly respect the work the committee's done, but if you guys feel you don't have any questions or all your questions were answered by this document, and that's as it is, it's not the case with me. But I won't support a blanket approval without at least having discussion on these applications, on the applicants.
All right, we need to move forward, so I'll withdraw my motion because I'll restate a motion. I withdraw the motion. We didn't second it, did we?
I had seconded. I would withdraw my second.
Okay, so we'll start over. And so I would move that we accept the recommendation of the committee pending funding. Let's see, how do we want to break this into two motions?
I would address the priority first, if it were me.
So I think that's the right thing to do too. I move that, because we know what we've got, I move that we approve the recommendations and the priority order that they are presenting today with the funding that is available today.
Well, I'll tell you, if we fund just these 4 priorities and more funds don't come, which we probably don't think is going to happen, but they doesn't, then there's nothing left to distribute to anybody else other than these 4. And so I think just funding the B11 at this point, just B11, that's it.
That's where I was initially, but then we started talking about the. All right, let's make that motion.
That won't exhaust.
That's a good start. And we can move forward.
And that would be a first motion.
All right, I move that we fund for now B11 highest priority. And
Second.
Then moving second, then that's good.
I have a motion on the floor then to approve funding for B11 as presented.
And this was a partial, correct?
No, that was full. But it is a portion, they have
That's the
matching
matching
funds
grant.
that are, so that what they're requesting is only 20% of what they're asking or needing.
Confuses the
And
percent.
that request is in the sum of $10,000.
Correct.
Okay, discussion on that.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Thank you for your discussion.
Anything here? And anything else from the floor? Hearing none, I guess I better look here. No hands are raised. Those in favor of funding for request B11 at this time, please signify by saying aye.
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 I have then, as we move forward with all the other applications, an idea that might satisfy Tom's concerns. I have another document that I could give to all 3 of you that have the details, more details, not all of them, but a lot of details about each of the other applications. It's kind of like an eyes only thing because we want to be careful with the information, but I could give it to you. You could study it yourselves on your own. And then maybe you could come to better informed knowledge of what you're voting on.
So, and then we would wait till
Another meeting. Or you could peruse it right now and you could decide, yeah, we want to move forward now. Or maybe you want to just go with the plan that we're working off of this clean.
I personally I would prefer to approve the remaining funding pending, the remaining applications pending funding. Personally. And that covers it and it gives us time. If we want to research it individually, we can. The funding ain't gonna happen until May. But I'm comfortable with what you've done.
So you've identified A4 as a priority, correct?
Yeah, but it's not that an opportunity would be lost between now and May.
Okay, and then,
Can I say something? The priorities really hasn't been discussed in the meetings.
Yeah,
And so I really think that that should be discussed when Trinity's here and we have the priorities. We had one priority that we knew we needed, and that was B11, which you guys already approved. So I don't think we can set the priorities here right now.
that's wise.
So it gets me back to the original point is, we're going to approve all these personally. I can't imagine why we wouldn't, pending funding.
Mhm. And that would be a good
And that
motion.
puts everybody to ease that's got their oar in the water. And if we want to do some more looking at it before we gather up, we can.
Would you be comfortable to look at that and come back on, say, Wednesday?
certainly, I wonder too if we should consider waiting until we know we have all the funding. If there's no other critical applicants. I think I heard Marcy say it, or maybe you said it, that it would be tough to cherry pick some and fund them now and not the others, because if we didn't get the funding, then we just cut the throat of $480,000 worth of applicants.
And we'd have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I like that idea. We can approve
But
it.
if we vote on any before then, you're not going to have that opportunity, and nor will we.
If it
That's
was a
my
vote
concern.
contingent upon the funds, then if the funds did not come in,
Then we would gather up.
then it would not be. an
Yeah.
approval.
I believe everything I read about Treasury that they're going to fund it. But I'm not willing to risk $490,000 on what I believe personally. Okay with contingent upon receiving the rest of the funds, but is that for every applicant then?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't distribute any other money until
Till it's funded.
we get total funding. Is that your understanding, or?
I think that's a good way to go.
Isn't that the motion that we just made?
We did not have a
I thought,
motion yet.
I thought we did.
No.
Okay, well, then I thought he did. I moved.
Made it, never got seconded.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you seconded it.
Somebody
The
seconded.
motion that we had and that we voted on was for B11 for the priority.
Yeah, but all right, so the motion is, I move that we accept the recommendation of the committee for the remaining applicants pending funding in May, the end of May, when the next tranche is. If it comes in, it's done. If it doesn't, then we have to
Go back to the
go back
drawing
to the
board.
drawing board and prioritize the only 400,000 or whatever remains, 300 X.
And you would prefer to look at that list? Would you be ready to vote on Wednesday?
We can't say without seeing what information we be provided.
But
Okay.
Kevin, why would we want to do it Wednesday? The motion is pending funding. That's a month from now. We got a month to do whatever we want.
I realize that. I'm trying to make sure that we can work to the best of all three of our
Okay,
situations here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think.
Sitting like that. Looks weird. Shh. You have a lot of messages.
mute.
Reggie,
The West Coast mom texted a lot. And then something with okay, let me text you.
Yeah.
Can I check you have it right
Reggie, I believe you're muted.
I got it.
Okay.
All right, I'm good.
Yeah, as I was getting ready to say, obviously our responsibility here is to disperse this money. I don't have any qualms about that. From this commissioner's seat, I do have qualms about 2 or 3 of these applications. That's why I will not support throwing a blanket over it. And in funding at all, unless, which it will, obviously, the opportunity arises to have a discussion about some of these.
So would it work? To me, it would. Pending funding is a month off. You got that much time to make yourself comfortable. Go work those 3 with the committee. Then come back, we can have that discussion.
Well, I think that'd be something that we would need to, that would be an open discussion.
It can be, but that was what I said.
It'd be a private discussion.
No, let me finish. Let me make sure I was clear. He can, I think it's perfectly okay for individually for us to understand the details of each one of these if we wanted to. And then come back when the board meets to final approval to say, here, either I'm comfortable or I'm not. If you're not, we'll have the open discussion on the 3 that are remaining or the 4, whatever it is.
I think I would support if the added documentation would make you comfortable, I would be willing to go till Wednesday myself. If that's not going to make any difference, then I think I would support going ahead at this time.
Well, and it's hard to say because we haven't seen the supporting documentation. I can't say, oh yeah, I'll look at it and then that'll answer all my questions. I can't say that because I don't know. I haven't seen it. So
we just put on the agenda and bring it up then.
It seems like that when you, the commissioners get in kind of a, whatever we're in right now, we use the word workshop. Can we have a workshop? No, can't have a workshop.
I don't know if we could, but we can't make a decision in it. We can, all you can do is look at the
But the
details.
workshop would provide you answers to your questions.
right.
Because I'm not sure, is there enough supporting documentation to answer whatever questions they might have? I mean, what other,
You mean what I've got available to
Yeah.
hand? It's mostly details for, it's dollar amount details with names of the applicants.
oh, okay, the sheet, yeah,
It's a document you created.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's details with the financial part of it.
Yeah.
My guess is
The deliberations that we have had would be something that we don't have in
we
writing.
don't have in writing yet, so that would be if whatever questions that they would ask that aren't financial, it's like, well, we don't have that answer for them unless you.
But
somebody-
we wouldn't know that unless we ask you that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly, we wouldn't know it, but I suspect that there will be some questions that aren't just financial. And that would be requiring to talk with us or with be in discussion or,
We specifically asked not to have names provided.
right,
So then we're turning around and going
We can't do
against. If you have specific questions on certain ones, I would support discussing those individually and approving the rest of the list at this time.
And that's really what I'm asking for. I mean,
Do you have specific ones that you
certainly.
have numbers of those?
List them out.
And I want to explain to the members of the committee that are here, my questions aren't undermining the work you've done. Right? I mean, we're being asked to spend $1 million without a lot of information. You guys got that information. I understand that that was the design of the whole process. So I'm not trying to discount the work you guys have done. Some of these, I mean, $4,000 or $5,000, not the end of the world. But I think we still need to be accountable for all the money that we vote to spend. For example, B2, I had made a note here. Again, I have no clue who this application is from. Purchase equipment that can be used in an emergency situation. Okay. My question is, what kind of equipment? Are these flares? Are they ladders? That's an example of the kind of questions I have. Maybe it's none of my business. I don't know that. We've never done this before. So.
And that one specifically was for radios.
Okay. And we've already funded radios for the county. So I'm assuming this is non-county, but again, I don't know that we need to know that necessarily.
It is non-county, but it is, well, town.
And is there a big, is there a big crime to say, I'm making this up because I have no idea. Town of Westcliff wants 8 radios. This is how much they're asking. Now, is that taboo? Can we not have that conversation?
I don't mind having the conversation with you at all about that.
Okay.
It's up to you guys to determine how much you want confidential.
Right. I think eventually this is all going to have to be made public, right? We're going to have to report to the
Yeah.
public how we spend
But
this money.
when we requested them to come to us, we
Right.
said we did not
Didn't
want to
wanna
know.
Understood.
Go argue between who's better.
Because it might influence our
Right.
decision. And so that's why I spoke to that.
Yeah, and so maybe another way to ask that is, well, is this a private person wanting radios? Is this a government entity wanting radios? Is a tax district wanting radios? You know what I'm saying?
And then he answered that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, as an
That's a good
example.
example.
And that's where the trust comes in.
Right,
That it's not a private individual, and you trusted us to decide whether that entity deserved radios.
but we don't know that it's a private individual.
I'm
I mean,
telling
we
you,
do
it's not a
now.
private individual.
Pardon?
I'm telling you.
Yeah,
it's-
but I'm just saying, across the whole thing, we wouldn't know that.
No, you trusted us
Right.
to figure that out.
And so, if you've got some questions like that about any one of these, we would like to answer the question for you.
Got it.
Keep going.
Restocking needed supplies after COVID. So those are COVID supplies,
Which one
you
you on?
know, before? Or are those just school supplies, period? Doesn't have anything to do with COVID.
I can,
This is a private service to the community that,
can we say that it's a 501c3? Can we say those things?
go ahead.
Yeah. I guess I just did.
That's what you said.
Well, on this one, it was after what they were trying to say. It was after COVID, things got all mixed up. And this is for helping the families that are struggling with school supplies. And this is something that's been going on for 7 years.
They have a
And
track
they-
record.
Yeah,
Good
and
one.
they're asking for this money to continue while they regroup sustainability. And this money would be used for 2020.
COVID disrupted their process and now they needed some help in order to get it established again. Is that what it is?
Thank you.
And then you've answered one of my questions on B9. My question was, are there going to be other funds? And you said you're recommending a partial funding, correct, of the request of 55%. Did I get that on the right line?
Yes.
Okay. So I've got a general question to ask the committee on these, specifically on the partial funding. Did you ask the applicants where they were going to get the other funding? Or did they already have the other funding? Was that a conversation had or not?
I think there were a couple of answers on it. We identified whether they had ongoing fundraising activities that we assumed that if they had a little boost to get over from the lull during COVID, that they could bust their buns and go out and get more funding. And the second thing, some of them did say if they had matching funds or partner organizations they were working with. So sometimes they actually said that, sometimes we knew of other resources.
Okay.
And then sometimes they would say, they would put, we want this, this, and this. And we would say, well, we think this portion of it
Fits the
fits the
criteria.
criteria, the other portion doesn't. And then in B9, that was the case. They had
So you're
two
willing to
portions.
fund some of it, but
Yes.
this other part of your request didn't even qualify.
Right, that's what we did, yes.
So you made a good point. You've used your criteria in all cases. Did the applicant know the criteria?
I don't think the applicants knew our 14-point
Okay,
criteria.
that's fine.
In the announcements that were put in the paper, a portion of the criteria were put in
Okay,
there.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I think we're doing a lot of discussion on this already. I think at this time I would second Bill's motion so we can officially move into discussion and we can address a couple
Thanks.
other concerns that you might have, and I think we can move forward
I agree.
at this time. So go ahead, sir.
Thank
Have
you,
another
appreciate
question.
that. B21, I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask the committee.
Yes.
That's all it is. So I don't even know what maintain and improve emergency shelter is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be comfortable voting on that unless I knew what that was. And then the other part of my question that I jotted down here is what type of expenses generally?
This is a community facility that has been a very positive asset in the community. It's used for a large variety of meetings and loses money almost every time they have a meeting there because they're just a help to the community. This applicant submitted 3 applications. We denied 2 of the 3, and this one came to the surface as one we thought this one really has had a positive impact on the community. And rather than denying all 3 of his
I think it's
applications, 4, okay, we approved this one because we all unanimously have benefited from this facility. And we know they have taken some hits in the last few years financially.
And you bring up a great point, and I meant to ask it early on. Were there multiple applications from a single entity?
This one was, and we denied 2 or 3 of the, was it 3?
There were others.
And did the committee feel like that was a detriment if, let's say, I submitted 3 applications, or did you try to consider those individually?
We
or-
looked at them individually.
Yeah, we really did.
We applied the criteria.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I thought we kind of had talked about there's no limit to the number of applications you could submit.
Right.
Right, I mean, it might be different things, which I'm assuming in this example, those 4 applications were for all different.
They were different things.
Well, I appreciate that, thank you. See, what number was that? I'm sorry.
21.
B21.
Yeah, so C1, it's a relatively significant amount of money. My question was, sure I'm not, yeah. The committee believes that this $138,000, it's not a match or a partial, that those are 2 different things, sorry. You're not recommending partial funding here. So I'm assuming that this $138,000 is going to take care of all of their needs, or are they bringing in additional?
They brought in a lot of extra money.
Yeah, and the project total was $226,000, and they just requested this amount because they're trying to
Got it.
get more.
Yeah. Okay, which I think is important
And again,
to know that.
You said this was a priority too,
they've,
initially.
in order to reimburse expenses that have already been made.
Mhm.
Now, we don't have any obligation to reimburse, but the funding that has been acquired by this organization was through charitable contribution.
That's part of the ARPA criteria too.
Yeah. And
People well.
there's no doubt this organization benefits the whole community. And that was something that was big on our criteria.
I beg your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So we might as well talk about one of the elephants in the room from my perspective, and that would be C3. 200,000, so 20% of our total funding. And you're recommending a partial of 35%.
Mhm.
On any of these partials, I think it's absolutely incumbent upon us to say, where's the rest of the money coming from? And that would be my question specifically to C3. If we vote to fund $200,000, I, as a commissioner, would like to know that that money is going to be used for this purpose. And for me to know that, I have to ask, do you know where the rest of the money is coming from?
And that would be up to the applicant to actually figure out the funding for the rest of it. And if the applicant was not able to fund the rest of it, they would need to decline the grant.
Is that what you gave?
Did
Is
you
that
have
what your
that
criteria? Is that what you told them?
conversation with them, or-
Well, you know, that's a good question. It's our understanding that the committee's understanding, and it's a informal understanding that there would be the strings attached of needing to come up with a plan of being able to fund this project fully in order to receive the 200,000. And there's a chance that that would be able to be done. And if it's not able to be done, they're not going to be needing that 200,000.
You initially said this was a priority. You said they needed it in order to get the funding. That's what it sounded like.
It has to do with a real estate a venture, or not venture, that's the wrong term, transaction, that real estate transactions come and go.
Sure. Well, and to my earlier point, if we rubber stamp all of these, then we have no opportunity to attach to those strings. We're just saying, take the money. We're not, if that was the case, we wouldn't even ask, what are you gonna do with this money if you don't buy this building?
Mhm.
We've given you the money, do whatever you want with it, and I'm not comfortable with that. That's why I think, especially for the Cs, because of the dollar amount involved, that we need to take a hard look at it.
And I understand that concern. And maybe that's above our committee's ability to figure out.
Right, that's why it's good. You initially said this was an interim, what did you call it, an interim? What was that?
Priority?
No, it wasn't a priority. He says a partial funding, and you initially called it.
On C3?
Yeah.
They were personally interviewed.
Oh, that's right. They were personally interviewed.
Before the committee as a
Right.
whole.
And so their whole point, the whole point was they needed the money in order to be eligible to raise the rest of it. Is that what the deal is? What was it?
The initial request was a full funding of a real estate transaction.
So.
And one that.
How did you come up with we can get by with a partial then?
We ran out of funds.
Well.
That's what it came down
to. But why fund it?
We didn't have enough funds to fund these larger requests at the full.
Why fund that if that doesn't do them any good?
It may do them some good if they would come up with a plan. And that plan would depend on so many moving parts. Well, I say so many, 4 or 5 moving parts.
So the point is, without the funding, they're not even bothering with a plan.
Correct.
They got to have the funding in order to move ahead.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And you all thought the moving ahead was well worth it from a community standpoint.
From a community standpoint, it helps the entire community in a way that is significant.
So in regards to C3 specifically, I look at it differently than what Commissioner Canada just said. About they can't move forward unless they get this funding. I don't see in a real estate transaction, they can't move forward unless they have the full purchase price.
Well, not necessarily.
So they're gonna buy a piece of property and not pay the purchase price.
There need to be funding in addition to the grant.
Right.
A mortgage.
There's mortgage, there's lease purchase
Right.
agreements, you know, there's other ways to get the
Absolutely.
other piece of it.
So if they had this, knowing this, they can go some way that fits that amount of money.
Yeah.
I understand.
And that would fall under your number 9, where they're requesting matching funds or collaborating. Where they're actually using other funds.
Number 9, I'm not sure what is number 9.
Matching fund, it's really not a matching fund, it's partial payment, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
But they're gonna have to
It's,
come up
it's
with.
actually providing a down payment on a mortgage is what it sounds like.
Yep.
It might, but it might not be either.
Well, and if it's not, then it comes back to the county and you either charge this committee with figuring out what to do with that money. or
It's
you
true, and
figure it
we've
out.
got, what, 3 years to deal with that, to make it spend.
The one reoccurring
Makes
theme
sense.
that we heard over and over was the lack of affordable housing in this community. And so.
This addresses one.
We couldn't do everything for everybody. We tried to do what we could,
Makes
where we
sense.
could,
Right.
with the money we had to help this community retain employees.
Another question that I had, and certainly delves into just exactly what you were touching on there. We have an affordable housing board. Was there a conversation about this kind? There's 2 of these, really, this one and one for 65,000. Did the committee have a conversation about the involvement of the affordable attainable housing board, or
Not
did you look at these
specifically
completely separate?
not specifically that board. However, the subject probably came up 15 or 20 times.
Okay.
Would that be honest?
I think so.
At least that. And I think we also all acknowledge that there's sort of a need for an overarching strategy to assure that we're developing an approach that's community-wide. And so we
Memo.
certainly agree that there needs to be a plan developed that helps not only the schools and the health and the first responders and even the business owners that need affordable housing for their employees, but you need an overarching plan. We just were trying to do what we could with what we saw that we had with viable applicants that gave enough information that we could make decisions.
We had to steer away from being an affordable housing committee every once in a while.
Maybe you spend the money on all of it, on it, not enough money to do it,
That's right.
period.
I found, being a county commissioner, found C13 to be interesting. I guess my 2 questions that I have written down were, how were these priorities determined and what part of the county building are we talking about? But maybe those are questions that I don't have any business asking as a county commissioner. Obviously, the committee was comfortable with this application. That's why you're making the recommendation.
You have multiple buildings, and one of them is in, probably more than one of them, probably all of them are in need. But one specifically was from this application, addressed some renovations. And they presented to us how, because of the COVID situation, they were utilized more than they had been in previous years. And
What, the building or
the activity that's going on inside the building.
Yeah.
And we felt comfortable with their application.
And this was a partial.
60%, it said.
Yeah.
Yes. And
their application was pretty specific, and we were able to separate the needs from the wants.
Yeah.
We funded the needs.
And
I asked for 31,000 and we are recommending 18.
okay, and does the committee feel like 18 is gonna take care of the needs, or they have other money to put with the 18?
The other money is money that you have already allotted or promised to them.
Maintenance, I think.
Yeah.
And it won't fulfill all of the wants, but we all have wants that are funded.
Wants aren't critical.
And like Carol said, a lot of the things came from needs, not what they want. And so we use that for several of these.
Right.
Yeah.
Go off on a whole nother tangent about this specific one, because it gets a little weird, really, about this is a county function. right?
Yeah.
And
There's a lot of volunteer activity at this county function.
So we're well aware of that. There's $7 million worth of those kinds of things that we depend on from grants and volunteer efforts
Yeah.
for our budget.
Case in point. You guys put in a lot of volunteer hours here.
Yeah.
Greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
C15. Found this to be interesting. I would like some additional, I'm not challenging your recommendations.
Absolutely.
Please don't think I'm doing that. I'm just trying to get myself educated here.
I can address it or the other.
Yeah.
This is a non-government service in the community that provides guidance and counseling, particularly for young people. And they have a good track record and they're well respected within the community. And I'll tell you what, the COVID situation has hit young people emotionally in ways that makes me sad. As I hate to see the damage that the loneliness and the fear has caused within the young people particularly. If it's been hard for you guys, guess what? It's been double hard for kids who don't have as big a framework. And this service provides counseling to kids. How's that?
Well said, yeah. And it's the school's referring kiddos to some of these services and also help, and it is geared to help parents as well.
This is an organization or a private individual?
Organization.
Private organization.
It's a private organization. It is an organization, but it's private.
Is that correct?
That's
It's a
correct.
private organization, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone around and around this table about spending money on studies. We get criticized for spending
Yeah.
money on studies.
And we weren't interested in that. That was something that we had that didn't fit the criteria. We thought, this is not a study. This is engagement with the kids.
I would say it's more of a needs assessment. What do the parents need that we can put into place? And what activities are essential and how can we facilitate?
In fact, you see, they asked for 31,500. We're recommending 18 because part of their request was, oh, what's that?
You're on the wrong one.
25, C
15.
C15, I'm sorry.
80%.
Oh, yeah, we didn't fund 500 of their requests, which seemed to us to be what you're just talking about, a research.
Yeah, again, I'm not disagreeing that this is definitely a need. Was there any discussion about who was going to do the assessment? Were they going to do it in-house? Were they going to hire a third party?
In-house is
Okay.
what the way I read it. And, so we can go back and look at it, but it was basically.
Be a non-committee member comment. We just got turned down for our suicide prevention grant for $100,000 that we desperately need for 4 counties. So this, if we're going to cut off suicide at the pass, this is the place to begin.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a voting member on our opioid consortium for Region 15. I'm all in on this. I just think there were some questions there.
Yeah.
And then C17. That is a ton of money.
Yes, it
So I
is.
would, my honest question to be the committee convince me to vote to spend $100,000 on this.
This is connected. I mean, I think we almost have to divulge part of the application. It's part of the public schools. Public schools in need here. They were asking for more than twice what we are recommending. And who can address?
Basically, they got the basic childcare center and some of the preliminary funding. They're trying to do bridge funding until they have the early childhood, the new legal or the bill that just passed recently. And so they knew that was coming, but that put us with a childcare center, but without the permanent funding that will come through the state. And they asked for, like I said, over 200. And we felt like that with them just getting started, based on what they shared with us, that this should be able to allow them to do the basics, to get the startup for the first year and a half or whatever until the state funding is.
So does that mean operating and operational funding?
Yes.
What you're talking about, just to actually go and
And-
start.
Kids Council's also involved in this,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
I'm not asking who made the application, but I know that because we're the fiscal agent for Kids Council, so we see all of those distributions of money and have some feel of what's been spent on that child care center to this point. And I applaud Stacy for her work with that.
And as you know, it's kind of part of the constellation of things that allow young families to come here and stay here.
Right. And then C18 also, again, a couple questions. One, was this in conjunction with our existing county attainable housing board? Or was there a conversation about that? And is this a business, individual?
So no, there wasn't consultation. And no to the second question too. That would be a wise thing probably to do. However, this was a private contractor who has a track record and is in process of doing these things. And we wanted to encourage the business model that this private contractor is engaged in and fulfilling. This is not speculation. This business is moving forward. And we all were very impressed with the business model. And they're moving forward with it. We wanted to encourage it because we, again, there's a lot of meetings about affordable housing. This person, this business, they're doing it. And I say person, it's a business and there's a owner, manager, and they're in the process. And they're looking at 12 affordable housing units and they're moving forward with it. We thought we wanted to encourage that.
We did want to ask you whether you wanted to do almost I guess you could say a strings attached thing again, in terms of we don't want it to turn into short-term rentals. We want it to be available for permanent residents in the community. And so the one thing you'll even see we put down on here that our hope and anticipation is, and potential condition would be.
Yeah.
You said it should not for a short term.
Not be for short-term rental. The Trinity examined this really closely too.
Yeah.
And it
That imply it's a rental, could be a rental, long term.
They buy the slots, or they rent the land and they purchase the building. And so one of the things that the application brought out was that the people at the same time that can barely afford anything, they can afford this, and at the same time they're building equity when they have their kids and stuff to move on. So I don't know.
I see.
I don't think it's going to be I mean, I guess that we could put that, but it's for young families, teachers, workers, sheriffs, to be able to afford something and to move on and build capital.
So they're not, it's not their mortgage, it's somebody else's footing the bill for that, in other words, leasing the land to them.
They lease the land,
And then
yes.
Then, okay, makes sense.
And it might be helpful. One of our committee members is Trinity Huffman. He's a contractor. He is not associated with this business. He did research it and even talked to the owners and came back with a report to us. That was one of those type of things.
Yeah.
So the request was for 150,000.
105,000, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of the most thorough applications that we really got. Other private.
Yeah,
They're
you know,
local,
this-
and the family is local. The family is local.
this affordable housing thing, which is a oxymoron in my world, workforce housing or attainable, which borders affordable.
Still.
So I guess without really getting too deep in the weeds, did the committee have a discussion about what they felt affordable was? Obviously, the big question is, how much is this affordable house going to hit the market at, and is it affordable? Is it only going to be for workforce housing in Custer County for people that work here? I doubt you got into the weeds to all of that.
The
And then
application
what
said,
about
the application
resale?
said that. The application said it is for workforce. But I don't know how you pin that
Right.
down.
You can't regulate.
You can't regulate.
Yeah, the Affordable Housing, Attainable Housing Board, they have a lot of discussion about deed restrictions. This is a little different because we're not funding the entire project. I understand that, but.
Oh, and the entire project, I think, was like over 450,000. They were only asking for 105,000 just to get started.
And again, trying to be fiscally responsible to at least ask the question is, for all of us, not just for the commission, but this whole community, this whole county, what happens if they don't get started? What happens to that 65,000? Did we just send it up a rope?
Well, the
Never
good news
worry
is
about it
they have
again.
working permits and a water tap, which is one of the few places you
Right.
can, that they have a water tap.
So they've gotten started, is that what you said?
Yeah.
And I think to your question there, Tom, excuse me, I'm sorry. If they're not able to utilize these funds, they, per the requirements of ARPA, those funds need to be returned to us. And that needs to be made clear when we give that money to them. Because we have to report how that money is used.
Right. I think it's after you've cut the check, it's gone probably.
Yeah.
But you don't cut the check till some criteria is met on some of these is my thought.
Yeah.
Right.
Yet that wasn't our job to figure out how to do that.
Right. My response, if I may, Commissioner Day, is I agree. We have to report where this money went. I'm not picking on this C-18, but we're there, so let's use it for an example. That guy has a heart attack and he goes out of business. Who's on the hook for that money? Not the guy who went out of business. We're the ones who are going to have to refund that money back to the feds, even if they say that wasn't even eligible and we already spent the money, we still have to.
Well, that could be the case with any.
Exactly. I just
Every
said,
one
I'm
of
just
those
using
have the
this for an
same
example.
criteria. I mean, 'cause-
Right.
and that,
And I look at it the same way as to grant monies that we receive. Brayden brought to us today, there was a grant that we did not utilize the funds. He had to turn around and he cut that check back to them.
Right.
Because if you don't utilize them, you've got to turn them back in. And that needs to be a stipulation. that
and we
put
need
on
to
there.
see what the,
Granted, it may be hard to police, but that needs to be on there. And there again, I guess to your point a while ago, at some point, we have to trust these people to be honest as well.
well, and then,
And to some degree, I mean, because we can't be with them day in and day out to make sure they spend the money exactly how.
No,
Well, and-
without stipulations, we're just opening ourselves.
well, the big picture is that ARPA money is being misused already. And that's been on the news already. They've been allocated money to the schools to get ventilation and all that, and they're funding woke crap stuff.
Surprise.
Critical race, make us whatever. So there isn't, it's not being policed. It's not even in the ARPA bill. That's the problem. But we care, and so we can watch it. And
Yeah,
I'm smiling because I was thinking corruption has never helped anyone, but it's helping the Ukrainians because the Russian army's corruption is just really showing how.
that's true. It's amazing.
well, undetected corruption seems to be helping a lot of people. We see that through COVID money that was embezzled.
Right.
Yeah.
If
Oh,
they don't get caught, it's doing them a lot of.
and
good.
that's
Not doing the
part-
rest of the city good, but
part of there's no free money, and it
right.
hurts when hurts economically when governments hand out money.
Yeah, and
You want to
then,
get me going on that?
No, you'll get me going, and I won't stop.
yeah, you partially answered when we went back then and did the partial funding was partial answer to one of my questions on C21. The power costs for the ambulances. On the big picture of that request, you're recommending we fund 30% of that, correct?
Yeah, these are expensive.
Their ask was 120 some thousand.
145.
How many?
143.
costs was one of my questions.
One,
They asked for
Okay.
3, we're proposing to
on this
fund 1.
report, one.
Okay, so they run about 50 grand a piece.
Mm,
They're costs that cost as much as a car.
Yeah.
But you get to go out in style.
yeah.
Yeah, helicopters, at least you get a better view.
Yeah, I had some other questions, but they're probably way too pointed for.
I hope that you're asking on these samples helps you understand what we went through in the process.
It does, yes, yeah. Because without me asking those questions, I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be more questions because some of this is definitely going to fall back on the BOCC. It's not just going to be a check written.
Yeah, and
It's going to fall back on you, but
exactly. Yeah, they're not gonna come headhunt the committee. All right, you guys have done your job. And if somebody were say to me, without asking these questions, for example, well, how many costs did you buy? I don't know, I was afraid to ask. You know, that's crazy, because we're gonna have to stand the litmus test on all of this.
and you're going to have to work with the money. There's
Right.
definitely some of these that you're just not going to write a check to.
Well, we will if the motion passes, it's on the table. There's no discussion. That's my angst is now. I can tell you, given the opportunity, I would vote no on 2 of their recommendations. Now, if you take that away from me by passing this motion, that's politics. That's just the way it is. That's why I don't want to vote no on all of these, but I will if I'm forced to. And it's not about all of them, it's about 2 of them. And that's, to me, that's not right. I could roll over and just say, okay, let's do it. I can't do that.
And we could debate those too.
We
You're
could,
not
which I
necessarily
almost
right either.
introduced a motion
So-
to address that, or an amendment to address
So,
that.
but,
Bill, you're right.
And if you're needing to look at their applications,
Go do it.
there may be some individual applicants that you're needing to debate yourselves.
You can do
And
that.
we have the applications available
Right.
to you.
So we can do that the way we've got the motion set up. That
If
time.
you have 2 you would like to look at further, then
Are they, are 2 of the ones you just asked about?
Yeah, no, yes.
Okay,
This
so,
whole list.
so let's,
Two of those is in there.
we can move on. That can be done. You can still do that. It's not going to be funded until May. We can, and it's our money. We can do how we want to do it.
Well,
It's,
the motion was to approve all of these.
right.
Okay,
And pending funding. And then we can always not fund something if in the meantime, we find out there's a reason not to.
well, unless we revisit it.
That's what we'd have to do.
Instead of approve this, accept the recommendations
Yeah.
And what that means is there's still, you're not legally bound to,
That's what the motion was. We're accepting
Clint
the
can answer.
recommendation.
You're accepting the recommendations and then you can
Decide when to
what to
fund it.
do with it and how you're going to deal with it
Right.
in
Can you
detail.
read that motion back here, please?
No, it was to accept the recommendation pending funding when it came.
Yeah. And see that word accept doesn't mean that you're
Right.
necessarily going to cut
We're
a
not
check on
cutting a
all
check.
these
We're
right
just
away.
accepting the recommendations you've done.
Well,
And those are things we can still decide what to do with.
Can make adjustments.
If we're, that's right.
How do you share with the public what the list of those?
well, from my perspective, once we make a decision to fund any or all of those, then we make that
Right.
public on our website, or we have to be transparent about it.
Right.
Eventually, I don't think we do now, but at some point, that would be my recommendation to the board would be to post it on the website and maybe put an article in the paper about it.
Like, I mean, you did it for the first round,
Right.
you just put the name and the dollar amount.
Yeah, and we had that discussion briefly about that,
Right.
so. But, you're giving us a recommendation to approve the funding of these.
Not approve the
No.
funding, accept
Accept
our
the
recommendations.
recommendations to consider.
And that leaves a lot of wiggle room for you guys.
It does.
More than that
it's worded that
$10,000.
way.
That's how it's worded.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want to undermine and offend the committee. Let's say that we're all happy and everybody goes, and then in a week you find out we didn't fund 3 of these.
That's up to you.
Well, and when we don't do that, it's going to be a public meeting. So they'll have the opportunity to be here to, as a matter of fact, I'd want them here because they're the ones that have the background beyond what we're going to
I would
learn.
accept the questions I mean, I just don't think we can turn something over to you guys without questions. And
Right.
hopefully we have the answers, but if they're not the answers that meet what you need, then
Sure.
So this is a good first start. That's how we couch this initially. These are recommendations we've got, and we're going to accept them pending the funding. We are going to cut a check for one. We've made that decision already. And we did that knowing and with your recommendation and help. So I'm good still.
Can I ask, how do we move forward? If you're, Mr. Chairman, what's next? How are you gonna resolve this issue? That there's 2
I would-
who's not interested?
Have another meeting.
If you have issues with 2 particular, I would entertain a motion with an amendment to the motion to withdraw those 2 from consideration at this time, and we will look at them separately.
Well,
You can still do that with the motion that you've got.
that's right, because we can do that at any time. We can have a separate meeting and have it a public meeting to discuss those 2.
There's a difference between approving payment and accepting our recommendations.
But at the same time, it would be prudent to let a lot of these people know that pending the funding coming in, that
That's right.
they are in line to get that money. Rather than have them wait
That's
a
right.
month and a half before that
That's
decision is ultimately made. I would like to take care of, personally, I would like to take care of everything we could at the present time. And if you have issues with 2, we could look at those 2 separately and put them on an agenda to look at and make a decision on those 2, but I would like to personally make a decision on the rest of this time.
So I like that idea, but, and here's how I view it. Accepting the recommendations, and if nothing happens, and when the funds are funded and we write the checks, it's done. They know they're accepted, it's ready. It would be by exception that you wouldn't fund it, and at that time, we would not cut the check, and we can have the meeting prior to that at any time. If we wanted to have it the next meeting or in the middle of the month, and consider those to make sure, and then whatever we let go, it could be those as well. We can put those back in. They would be funded at when the funds are available.
I think we would need to have on record, I think.
Yeah.
the exceptions at this time when we make this vote, but that's my opinion.
Can I ask a question? Are you sure in your mind that you disapprove of those two, or can you be convinced? Do you need more information? Is there something else we can
That's a
answer
great
for you?
question. That is a great question.
Because if there's no convincing yet, then just go ahead and vote.
We'll vote.
Sure, that
You know,
only
if
takes
you-
two.
If you
Yeah,
think
we're
that,
very aware of that.
if you think that more information would help, is there more information we can supply you today to get you over that hump? Or do you think you can't get over that hump?
That's a great question. I would say I'm not in a position where I don't think I can get over that hump. We're, in my opinion, we're paying the price of dealing with a lot of stuff in a public meeting. Obviously, we're paying the price that we agreed we wouldn't even know who these applicants are. I supported that, but it's just a stumbling block, right? So I have a lot of angst. If you want to have this conversation, I'm willing to have it. Mr. Chair, it's up to you.
Hello.
I can air my concerns out about individual applications if you want. Sounds like you got somebody wanting.
Who was?
Yeah. This is Reggie Foster, PIO. I've had my hand up for a long time, so pardon the interruption, but I just wanted to.
My mistake, I did not see it. Go ahead.
So first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay, first of all, I want to thank the ARPA committee for all they've done. We have entrusted them to pour over these applications and invest themselves in making the appropriate choices. They have outlined a criteria that they applied to every applicant. They are not beholden to constituents. They are beholden to making the right decision based on the criteria. I have full trust in that committee and believe that they have done due diligence. And we asked for confidentiality, and that we're trying to poke holes in that confidentiality. And I would just like for you guys to keep that in mind. And thanks again to the ARPA committee for all that you have done and for your transparency and for laying out the criteria that you used in this process.
Thank you, Reggie.
I apologize for not seeing your hand. I was in conversation and never looked at my
And I
computer screen.
apologize. I thought that would come later. And
Just keep your eyes on them.
so anybody that raises their hand has the opportunity to speak at any time.
Yeah, you bet. Or could be recognized. It's got to know it.
Yes,
I'm gonna raise my hand. And I'm Joni Reedman. And in a prior life, I worked for the state of Colorado reviewing grants. And I also reviewed a lot of federal grants going to the state and also to counties and municipalities. And I really appreciate the fact that this is all new process, that you've never done it before. And what I'm hearing you working on is trying to establish a process so that you can then in the future have it in place. And there's a lot of intricacies that you're exploring, which is great. But one of the things that I popped into my mind was I like accepting the recommendations from the committee. They did it. We always did that from the reviewers. And then we met and re-reviewed, and I don't believe that you want to go through a re-review because that's tedious. But I do understand that you all may have information that may not have popped up in the application or that the committee asked about or thought about, and I'm kind of guessing that's what Tom is dealing with. And so I think what you do is you have these protections that you put in And one of them is saying, we accept the recommendations. We will review them. And as expediently as possible to inform the applicants so they're not dealing with an unknown, that you have a date, that the applicants will know if they've been approved or denied. So they're not waiting. I strongly recommend that. And I recommend that you just review them again, even if you do it in a private session, whatever.
No private sessions.
No private sessions, okay. Then you review them, and then you make your recommendations for funding. You're getting the committee's hard work recommendations. Now you need to do the hard work and deciding, are you going to accept them all or not?
Mayor, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
question for the committee, your expectations coming in today, this morning at the start of this, were you expecting us to decide today? Well, I've had people approach me and say,
Yeah.
when do you think?
Possibly so.
Okay,
Yeah, I was giving it about a 75–80% chance that you would make a decision to approve this. And yes, I get emails or phone calls every other day asking, hey,
What's the status?
what's the status?
as have I.
Yeah,
And I just want to reiterate, if in the future, that you have a timeline and you tell the applicants that they will be notified no later than when they apply.
And that didn't happen, right? You guys didn't say anything
Yes,
to the
we did.
committee or?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
And when were we going to be notified?
Well, it said, what did,
the end of this month. This is April.
it said, yeah, at the end of this month.
Well,
We did not publish that in a way that probably would have been the
Well, we
best. But
we responded to each individual, telling them that we got your application. They will be reviewed in April. And
Brought to the commission.
so.
It should have a result at the end of April.
Should have a
So
result.
we're at the end of April now.
So I believe that we have that opportunity to do exactly what the process you said, and which is what we're discussing.
But
We
appreciate,
can accept the recommendations and we can set the timeline that we accept all of them. And then they will be funded pending funding and accepted for approval, period. Because we can do that and we know that they're valid or not. We can have a meeting to discuss what we don't like or recommend it and approve all of them, or we can take 2 out and add 2 more in. We got a lot of time to do that because the time frame is a couple of years down the road to spend all this.
the other thing is
Just a
people
second, I think.
applying for funding often understand
second
that they
for
get approval.
Joni.
with
Speak up,
conditions.
dude.
Joni, 1 second. I think Andrew had something he was trying to say.
I'm sorry, I was just going to thank Joni for her understanding that we haven't done this before
No.
and we're on the learning process. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay, no,
And so
Okay,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say, it is the rare applicant that gets funded without conditions. And so it is almost expected from a grantee that there are going to be conditions. And I think that's where you will come in.
Did the committee have that conversation with applicants?
No.
There might be conditions.
It really wasn't our job.
But we can state that now.
But going through this where we did today, there are some that I think would be immediately accepted. And I would hate to penalize those when we know for a fact that they're going to be accepted and on their way. Is there a way for, when you make this motion, to go through it right away and said, yeah, yes, because you know how much levy we do. And especially B's. I don't think there was any questions that didn't get answered in B's, and B's was 77,000. plus another 1,200 for an A. I mean, that's less than $80,000 that you can notify these people right away.
Yeah, but I could see somebody making the argument of, so you just automatically approved all the smaller amounts under 10,000, and then we're gonna have to wait to see what you're gonna do about anything over 10,000.
Yeah.
I can see that.
But that's.
But so what? You know, that's
It was
part of
less-
the process.
The A's and B's were less than 10% of the funding.
Right.
So if somebody questions that, it's like, well, yeah,
Well, even if it wasn't 10%, if it was valid and
yeah,
we agreed that there's no reason not to fund it.
yeah.
Well, we seem to be still hung
Okay,
up
yeah,
on two.
We're hung up on
applications.
two,
We're
so
hung up on two. Can
Well,
you ask us more
I don't
questions
know
about
that
that?
it's a magic number. I threw that out there, but no, I don't think so. I don't think your committee would be able to answer my questions or concerns. I think it's a commissioner conversation. Committee may be able to add color to that, but I think.
And could you not, I forget to raise my hand.
go ahead, Joan.
Could you not meet with those two applicants?
We can do whatever we want, whatever we can agree to do.
If it might help, and I don't know if I've got an idea that would be helpful. In the criteria, some of those criteria had to do with how much of an impact it's going to have on the community as a whole. You might have one application for $5,000 that just impacts 3 or 5 people, and another one that's for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, but it's impacting hundreds, if not thousands of people in the community. And so we weighted some of that impact, and that was helpful for us to realize we're not comparing the same fruit all the time.
Right. Absolutely.
All right, let me try something because we got to move on.
Yes.
This is enough. We can approve it, every one of these pending funding. In the meantime, we can, as a committee, commissioners can have a separate meeting. I might have another concern. I've done a lot of research on this. I've gotten a lot of input. I understand it, but I may have an issue too. I think we owe it to each other, Kevin, Tom, and I. We can talk. I'll say, let's have a meeting either in the mid-month timeframe or not, or we can do it sooner than that and discuss this in a public meeting. Why we don't think that guy ought to be funded or not. That has to be done in a public meeting. And I would like to have that in with you there to help add color, if you want to call it that. Because we can't do it in a vacuum and we can't do it in private for sure. And so we need to move on. I think we can approve the acceptance of your recommendations now. And then come up with another time to have another meeting.
Part of that conversation would be obligations that the grantees would have in regards to the money. So I think we would need to sit down, some of them, so that if they cannot utilize the funding, they understand that needs to come back and that it is to be used for the reasons stated. But we do have a motion on the floor. We're kind of going around in circles here now. So do we have any further new discussion on this at this point?
So the motion
is to accept the recommendations of the ARPA committee presented today.
Pending funding.
The additional funding coming in.
So if we get additional funding, then the intent of the motion is to approve these.
All these would be paid unless we stop it, which we can before it's funded, until we write the check. So if we have a concern, if I have something coming up next week and I want to talk about it with you two guys, I would recommend to you, I'd say, here's what I want to see us discuss. Tom, you've got 2 or 3, whatever they are. And then we can look at those specifically so that we're educated enough to have an intelligent conversation in public to understand whether they ought to be further considered or not. And if they're not, then that's an easy call. Then we just put it back in the committee, they pull up another bunch and we go into another meeting to accept a recommendation on what it would be. Process wise, that's how I view it.
I would like to see that happen sooner rather than later.
If we can do that whenever we decide.
So really, the motion is to accept the report, the recommendations from the committee.
Right. Pending funding. And then that can, all the applicants can rest easy in a month. They know they're going to be funded, like the ones that we aren't funding now. And then we can put out in another, have our meeting and deal with the ones we're concerned about.
But I'm looking at this from the community's standpoint, because I personally know there's a lot of people that are interested in knowing what is the outcome of this meeting today. And if the motion is to fund these applications pending funding, okay, what is the motion?
It's to accept the recommendations that they've given us for funding, and we said pending funding available. So we were not going to actually pay a dime until we got that other funding, because we said it wouldn't be fair because we can't partially fund them. So in that meantime, we can deal with after looking at it, and we can decide whether one needs to be pulled and another one added.
Can you accept the report pending further review?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're doing.
That's
Well,
not exactly
I know I'm splitting hairs, but
the way it is stated, it appears as though if the funding comes.
we're going to.
That's right.
It's funded.
But we've got 1 month to pull out whatever we want. Or we can state it now.
I don't know how you can say we have 1 month. We have 2 years to commit this funding.
Yes, but in the
What do you mean we
meantime,
have 1 month?
because we said pending funding of the second tranche of money. If we did nothing, then the next step would be we would write checks to everybody that they're asking for. We're not going to do it until that point. I said we have a month to consider doing whatever we want to do, have a separate meetings, make sure we're good with the applications, and we got a lot of time. We don't have to get if we pull 3 of them out, we got a lot of time, put 3 of them back in after the funding's put in, because we'd have to go get a recommendation and we would fund it.
Or you might, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to full fund the ones we have. But I'm just going to say that as part of the ARPA committee, I do not take it personal if you don't accept everything
Right.
that I just don't take it personal. And if we can help further on to
Sure.
say why we did something, but actually on some of those that you ask questions, I would like to hear from the BOCC why the questions, because I might change my mind.
That's true. So I don't mean recommendation, Tom. I mean another applicant could be considered, and we either let the committee give us 2 more people to consider, or we go do it ourselves.
I think I would like to see us. I personally would like to see if you have anything that you would like pulled, that you make a amendment for the resolution, and I would like to make a decision on the rest at this time, which by the wording of the motion would mean that pending the money's coming in, they would be funded.
That's the way I read. That's the way I hear the motion.
That's the way it
That's the
is.
way I hear it.
And that's
Exactly
why
the way
I'll
it
vote
is.
against it, because I don't believe that's right.
If you would like to make an amendment for certain ones you want pulled out, I would entertain that at this time.
Well, I appreciate that opportunity. I hadn't really thought about that.
And I concur with what was just said. The committee's not going to take any offense over any particular application being reviewed further.
Well, I would move to amend the motion then by inserting the following words: to exclude C3 from consideration, And to Carol's point, let me say this before I move on. It was a great point. I'm not saying that I'm going to vote no on these necessarily. Just because I'm listing these in my amendment doesn't mean I'm going to vote no against them. It means
Further
I'd like to
consideration.
have a further conversation about these and not just rubber stamp.
Okay, so
them.
make sure the motion then that you're gonna make says that, because we don't want them thinking it's been disapproved.
That's a good point. Thank you. Yeah. So I would move to amend the motion by inserting excluding the following to allow for further consideration.
Right.
That reasonable? Okay. C3. Give me a second here. I gotta peruse. Wasn't really prepared to sort these out. C17. C20. And let me find it. Building trades. I don't know what number it is. I can't see it.
C4.
Thank you. I wasn't near high enough. And C4.
I'll second that. I think that's good. It's just part of the process.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to
An amendment on the floor.
amend it on the floor, excuse me, sir. To exclude pending further review items C3, C17, C20, and C4. Further discussion on those.
Yeah, I think at some point we're going to peel back a few layers if we're going to have an honest conversation. And
Well, that's what we have to have with these. We take these four and have a separate meeting on. That's what we're gonna.
right. I just think at some point we have to be mature and leadership oriented enough to get by the whole secrecy thing. We're gonna have to have an open conversation.
Well, it has to be transparent. If there's got to, in order to understand what the angst is, we got to know.
Right, we got to ask some
There is.
pretty pointed questions.
That's okay. That's part of the job.
That's just a comment that sooner or later we have to know who these people are so we can get the answers we need, because we may not be able to get them from the committee. That's my point.
And I would look to the committee to get us what you did and get some research so that you're here to so we can have some understanding other than just starting over with the three of us with my bias or your bias or his bias.
And I want to just acknowledge that we worked really hard to stay with two things. One of them is the application we received and the information that they included voluntarily on that. And number two, the criteria that we developed that was based on the ARPA on our first meeting with y'all. And then the community standards that we thought were really important. So we were trying to clearly avoid, the other political influences, the other organizational frameworks that might be
Right.
that you're going to have to consider. And so we see that our job was based on those things, that you've got to complete it based on
Sure.
your
No,
framework.
that was my
And so-
experience.
Yeah, it's a great point. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have a motion on the floor then.
An amendment.
Amendment for
We didn't
the.
call the amendment.
We haven't voted on the amendment. We're still in discussion of the amendment.
Yes.
And I'd like to ask a question. Not considering the ones that are in the amendment. I'm back to are there going to be strings attached to some of these other ones? And when would we address that and how does that look?
So unless we do address it, then the way the motion is set, pending funding, the funding's available. At that point, we would meet and say, are we ready to go forward and write checks for each and every one of these? And we can put conditions on them then. Or you could have a meeting prior to that if we wanted to, before it's funded.
I think we're all in agreement that we do need to look at them
Right.
and
Right.
put those stipulations.
Conditions on them.
So yes, to that question, that does need to be looked at. But not re-looking at whether they're funded or not, just at what the requirements will be
Right.
to them.
Which is a standard, I think, which is
Yeah.
standard on your approval letter. You said you're awarded.
You've been
this,
awarded this,
this,
but you
this,
better show
this,
up to
and
work.
this. Yeah.
And I think I can speak for the committee. We'd probably meet one more time after you approve these and give you some suggestions of what we think are rational.
That would be a very good thing.
Conditions that are based on our observations and what they submitted to us.
That would probably be helpful.
Yeah, we need a starting point, and those are options. We need options to consider to make decisions with.
You know, to your point, and it's just an amazingly good point, that you as a committee were able to function without all this crap that some of us are gonna have to deal with.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of it, right? You didn't have to worry about that. And so I believe we get a true, unbiased recommendation from you.
That's right.
And then unfortunately, now we let the biases fall wherever they may moving forward. But I feel good that the committee was able to function without all of that extraneous stuff.
We as individuals had biases, but when we came together, it ironed it all out.
Right.
Right. And we do too here. And so that's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
You know, we deal with it how we see it and the facts.
Yeah. So I want, Mr. Chairman, to make sure we understand what motion is going to hit the permanent record, because that's what people are going to read and see. They're not going to hear what we just said about all these other caveats. They're going to read the motion in the minutes, and that's what we're going to have to be held accountable for.
With the amendment,
No, with the whole thing of, well, we'll meet again, and they're going to look and say, pending funding, I'm getting approved. That's, I think, what the motion's going to say.
They're approved pending funding. And at that point, then we haven't funded them. We have to have a meeting to fund it. Part of the record, if you want to make it a different motion, we can do that too.
Yeah, I'm looking at the optics of it, because there are a lot of people who are going to have eyes on this meeting, and they'll be wanting to get on the
Well, some of them are
website
in,
and look at the
some of
agenda.
them are in here.
Yeah,
So.
right.
So
but to that point, it's been stated by those that have been involved in grants and funding before, that is a normal process in distributing grants, is that there are conditions placed upon those grants.
When they're funded.
I don't know that that particular wording has to be in the motion.
You're the chairman.
All right,
Thank God.
let's call the question on the amendment. Let's get going.
Okay, let's call on the question. No further discussion. Those in favor of approving the amendment to state excluding pending further review, items C3, C17, C20, and C4, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so now I have a motion on the floor to accept the recommendations of the ARPA committee, excluding pending further review, items C3, C17, C20, and C4, pending the second half of our funding coming in. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 hallelujah.
I move we take a break.
Yeah, and if you guys do not convene again, we need to formally reach out to your committee and thank you for the service and time. I couldn't even begin to tell me how many times, I couldn't guess how many times you guys met.
I don't know, maybe 10 or 12.
Yeah, okay.
Some of them were up to 3 or 4 hours. We also need to consider a letter to those applicants that were denied. And I think we have a draft letter of that.
Yeah,
I have a copy.
she has a
We
copy
wrote
of
up
that.
That doesn't mean
And-
that they can't be changed, and I think it addresses some of your concerns on following up on, for example, doing a mid-project report, things like that. So we need to kind of work that out.
But that letter needs to come from the commissioners.
For the
It gets-
approvals.
So who has the letter? Did you give it to us? Have you emailed it to us?
Dorothy has it.
Okay, so you want, so do we, all we need to do is,
We need to not send that out until you resolve those other.
that's right. Because they could
So
be
nothing
part of the
goes out.
denial.
Or
Well-
there may be more money to distribute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at this
We're gonna have
time,
to look at how we're gonna distribute that.
I would like to look at a date for discussion on C3, C17, C20, and C4.
At that point, do you want those
That's
applications?
just where I was headed. Thank you.
I think it ought to be mid-month, give them time and we
Yeah.
time to get everybody grouped together. You
Again,
guys
I-
need to research those for us as well.
I think we're loaded.
Or maybe you got it all. It's just-
Do you guys think it would be appropriate for each of us to look at those applications that were included in the amendment?
I can get the copies off. there.
I don't want to come in cold.
Yes, it would be prudent to look at those now and so that we are informed in our discussions.
I'll get you copies this next, what is today?
Right.
Early next week, I'll get you copies.
And what's the commission's feelings about, I'm not advocating, I'm just asking a pure question. Should we or should we not approach the applicants?
I don't think we should. Let's take a look at it first. Let's get a feel. And if this further discussion says we need a little more, maybe we need to bring them in and interview them. That could be the process, might be. Otherwise, you're putting them on, they're coming in and sounding like it's a trial.
And I just want to bring up here, this wave has been rolling along and all of a sudden I just hit a wall. You don't know what you're comparing those to.
Right.
You don't know all of the other applications that we did not accept. You don't know all of the reasons we did partial funding. So you don't have the full picture to do what you're trying to do by getting in the weeds on 4 applications.
Unless there is a personal reason that we see there's something illegal going on and this guy is pulling the wool over your eyes. It would have to be that drastic in my view, because you've done it all.
We've done it, and now you're trying to pick it apart.
I'm not,
And when you try to pick it apart, you don't know what was on the disapproved, on the
I don't
denied
agree.
list.
I don't agree with that, Carol.
I have questions. I guarantee you I have questions about some of these that there's no way you could answer. I know that. And until I get those answers, I'm not comfortable.
I understand.
And that's why I asked, how many layers of the onion are we gonna peel off to be able to, number one, even have a freaking conversation about it in public without getting into the whole privacy or secrecy thing? And we still may not be able to get the answers to those questions. And a lot of it have to do with finances.
well, see, and that's part of the email traffic that we're gonna have. We're gonna get the applications. We're gonna have to understand what your concerns are and ours, and then we have the meeting. So that we can be intelligent about it and maybe secretive still.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of frustration built into the thing that we cannot have conversations without having somebody swear up and down. that we're
And that's just the
violating
way it is.
sunshine law.
That's why we don't do it. We gotta do what we gotta
And
do.
it doesn't violate sunshine. We can have all the conversations we want.
We just can't make the decision until we get in the public and everybody understands it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you guys very much.
Now can we have a break, Andrew?
You may have a break, sir.
Should have happened at 9:30. My bladder said it should have happened at
7:30. Woo, you must have an extra take.
I will recess for a short time. It is now 12:04.
9:30.
You can recycle it soon.
Be quick.
You just have to know it.
I just saw all this agenda stuff and didn't think you.
Okay, you ready to go back
Oh, I
in
know, we
session?
went through it. Hit it
We
very
went
fast.
through it
I'm just
really
staying as long
fast.
as I can.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Dorothy,
I'm ready.
you ready?
I have another item to bring up before we adjourn today.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna reconvene this Board of County Commissioners meeting. The time on my computer is now 12:13 PM. And we have Joni Lieberman who showed up, and we would like to get her back in here. So welcome.
Liebman.
Liebman, there's no ER,
No, you are. Liebman.
but you know what?
My
It
homework.
probably was Lieberman and they came over on Ellis Island and they probably cut it short.
I've heard our name got cut short too, so that's a
So
rumor.
now why are we reconsidering it?
So I was told that there is a Custer County sign ordinance. I talked to Jackie Hobby and she said, since this is going to be at the landfill and it is a county building, that all I need is approval from you all and she'll be fine with it. So the building is up. If you haven't seen it, I put the picture in.
Yeah, we've seen it.
And above each window is going to be a 2x3 metal sign, which is not very big. It's the same size as the width of the window. It will have specifying what can be recycled, dropped in that window. And so the sample is aluminum cans. That's the font we were going to use. It's going to be vinyl lettering rather than painting on the sign. It's going to last longer. And we're going to use that color blue consistently with everything that's dealing with recycling. Here on out, it'll be that font and that lettering. So we'll have signs for aluminum cans, tin cans, newspaper, other paper, cardboard. I don't think I missed anything. We're going to have a couple of windows that we've duplicated because we know we're going to get a lot of aluminum cans and the steel cans fill up too. So that's the signage. On the north side of the building, we're going to have a large sign. The letters will probably be 10 inches high.
Which is the bottom picture, right? The north side of the building.
Yes, that is the
End of
bottom
building,
picture.
the bottom picture.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it's going to be located. You could make recommendations. It's going to be a big 3x5 metal sign on the building with the blue lettering. We decided in capital letters, Custer County Recycles. Everything that's being done with this project is going to be Custer County Recycles. We may in the future come up with a logo for CCR. I don't know. But that's what's going to happen there. And then
That sign's gonna be between the two doors.
it's where you determine it. It could be over the entrance of the door. It could be between the two doors. We could leave it up to
Well,
Brian.
Brian could figure that. It could be on, the door is gonna be up more.
3 foot by 5 foot might not, it wouldn't fit on the door.
I think it would be up to Brian.
Overhead door.
But the door is up all the time, and then when it's in use, or is it always gonna be down?
It's going to be up and down depending upon the wind.
Right.
And
Anyway,
yeah, so it's hard to say.
This isn't a landfill issue. Brian doesn't have any input on this.
No, but we like to consider him.
he manages the area.
He does manage the area, and the group that's working on this is Wilson Jarvis, Economic Development, myself, High Country Recycling. Tom has been very actively involved representing the county. and Dennis Streaker, who does all the cardboard recycling. And then we have a couple other people who've been volunteers for High Country Recycling, doing a lot of work, including Steve Laswell and Steve Tappy. So,
Mike Liebman.
and Mike Lehman, oh my,
Not to be confused with Mike Lieberman.
yeah, right,
He's no good.
Yeah.
That's his cousin.
yeah.
He hadn't done anything.
They've all, I don't know, I cannot, oh, please don't let this come out that I didn't include him. He's been so seriously involved. So we have been meeting ever since this grant was awarded. And we got notification of the award before it was awarded, because that's usually the way it goes with grant awards. You have been accepted. There are some conditions. And when the conditions are met, then the award will come in. So that's the way it's been handled with us.
So you're looking for approval for
Those
signage on your building.
on the county building, and on the county property, we are going to put in some kind of, we're going to repair the landfill sign that exists, repaint it, make it all nice and spiffy, include that it's also recycling, and then have another metal sign in the ground as people come in, directing them. It'll probably be
Trash this
twofold
way, recycle
that way. And so I just need that approved, and then Jackie will be very happy.
All right. One question I would have, kind of bordered on Tom's comment a while ago that it didn't affect Brian, but then the last two do affect. Brian.
Yeah, I was
Right.
thinking about the ones on the building,
Yeah.
so.
Right.
My
And
only,
he's on board with that.
Oh, he's totally on board. He's met with the sign painter. They're in discussion on what should go on the
Who's painting
landfill
it?
sign.
the one thing I
Painting
was,
it.
Huh?
Who is-
Willie Britt, have you seen her work around town? Willie is donating all her services.
Oh,
that's
good.
cool.
And there's going to be more signs. I know you're tired and it's been a long morning, but
Kevin had a question before you came on.
Yeah, my only statement there would be, I know he's on board. I would just coordinate with him to make sure that, like the one that you place directing them, because that's going out in the yard somewhere,
yeah,
that you coordinate with him so it's not somewhere that would be in the way, say, for
Sure.
plowing snow or for other
right.
things that are going on there. So,
Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
apologize, my comments were directed towards signs on the building, and he had already said he doesn't have any.
Well, he's been, Willie Britt came out and met with him and she's met with him. They went in his office, went over what should go on the sign, and they're going to follow up as well. His was suggestion that we have directional signs, and she may make two matching ones. One goes to, where you're going to dump your stuff, and one where you're going to recycle.
Good.
He is absolutely in the loop. So good.
well, I would move that we approve the sign request presented by Joni.
I'll second.
I have
Oh, we've already dealt with this.
You did.
Yeah, you weren't here.
You're,
Oh,
we approved it.
well, I guess I'll hang on to the paper and recycle it.
we got mine back.
Practice recycle.
So
We did sign that.
I did sign it at the start of break and
Okay.
turn it in the door.
Thank you, because you said you were gonna do it later. So.
Yeah, I made sure I got it then. So I do have a motion on the floor to approve the signed request as presented by Joni here today. Any other discussion?
We're not concerned about the number of signs necessarily, right? We're not gonna dictate that. I think it would be wise to consider putting one on the east side of the building so people coming down Rosita Road could see that as well, but we're not saying you can only put up 7 or 5 or
Whatever works out.
that was my point, whatever's reasonable.
So, yeah, I think if they had a need for more, that could be included in that. Technically, I guess what's presented here is 6 signs there. and then a 3x5, and then the directional sign is what was presented.
Can I amend my
Or something.
request?
I would amend
Or
my
as
motion.
needed.
I think you're going where I was thinking of, so.
So if I would amend my motion to include future signage as needed.
Okay. So
Uh,
I'll second the amendment.
Okay,
And I have,
discussion on
thank you,
that.
sir. This, maybe we want to handle this differently, but we also need to address the signs for our county property up on the north of town on Rosita Road. We're gonna have signs up there too. We've already approved I don't want to call it the fire training property, but it's county property where the fire training occurs. We've already approved that as a collection site. Do we want to throw that signage in on this, or
Why
do
not?
we want to deal with it differently?
Put it on it.
They're both county properties, so I'm assuming Jackie will be on board with
Yeah.
both of them, if you haven't, when you have a conversation with her about that.
I'm sure she'll be fine if you prove it now.
And that'll have to be posted, signs on post up there, because there's
Right.
no building there.
It'll be an entrance sign.
Right, and you said as needed, right?
As
So
needed.
I'd support that.
To make it nice and clean, I think I would,
Do them separate.
better, I would,
Just say
I
on
could
county.
withdraw my motion and make it all in one motion
Well,
to make it clean.
yeah, maybe you could do a friendly rephrase of your motion to put signage as needed for both sites. I don't know.
For the recycling at
Say for
the
recycling to include,
landfill area, as well as
to
the
include.
county property north of town being used as a collection site.
Which there is an address.
Go ahead and write that down. Why don't you do this?
I don't remember the address of that property.
Lake Dewey's Road.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably end up calling that the North Collection Site.
We're calling them recycle roundups.
I know, but which one? So we've got to be able to
Gonna be
articulate.
West Cliff and Silver Cliff. And then one at the landfill.
Did you get? Okay.
You can pull it off of the.
Okay, so the amendment will include both the sites of
Both
at the
recycle.
landfill and the collection site north of town. Any other discussion? Okay, I have an amendment on the floor to state. Oh, great.
As stated, huh?
Yeah, as stated, to include as needed. Further signage as needed at the landfill and the collection site north of town. Those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So I now have a motion on the floor to accept, to approve the sign request as presented here today, as well as needed, future signs as needed, inclusive of the landfill property and the collection site north of town. Those in favor signify. Whoop. Do we have any further discussion on that?
One quick question for Joni. Have you specifically talked to Jackie about the size of any signs?
What Jackie has said to me is signs, anything larger than a real estate sign, need to be approved by the county commissioners.
Is absolutely mind-boggling. that we're
Well, and
defining
that's
a
why she
sign,
said
real estate sign.
She didn't think the 3x2 signs really needed approval because they weren't.
But if you wanted a 4x8 sign up north,
Right.
you're gonna have to go back to her. I think.
Only if you don't approve
it's
it
not
now.
on
Well, we're approving it.
It's
Oh, it's
approved.
not on county property?
No, on county property,
Yeah, you're approving it.
We're
Yeah,
approving.
then it'll be okay.
regardless of the size.
Right.
Yeah.
As long as we approve it, there's no rule.
She said if it comes up as an issue, there's a really large sign in Wetmore. Do you know where that is? That's up, that Wetmore has a.
It says Wetmore Library.
Yeah, is that it?
Yeah, I don't know. I know we have voted on waivers for the sign size in the past.
Well, then that's probably what she's telling.
But we're not voting for a waiver.
No, that's my
It's different.
point. Is she gonna come, if they want a 4x8 sign up there, are we gonna have to come back? and do
No.
whatever You believe you're okay,
No, yeah, I think
regardless
so.
of the size.
Yes,
You know, right now, the biggest one you've got is 3x5.
five, right.
It falls under the state criteria. I know some of that issue comes because of the beautification. I forget which first lady that came from
Yeah,
at this point.
Yeah.
But I would use good taste.
I was gonna say, we're not gonna do anything outrageous.
Let's get
What we
20
are,
by 20 line.
we are gonna ask,
Recycle here.
we're gonna ask CDOT to put in another sign that says recycling with an arrow on 69, kind of similar.
Going north.
Yeah, going north, similar to the one going south for the landfill and recycling sign.
Good idea.
Yeah.
That would be good. Any further discussion on that?
Not for me.
You guys gotta be exhausted.
Those in favor?
We got another meeting.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Thank you.
Oh, I voted for you. Did you hear that?
I did, aye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yep.
I thought if I got here around 10 o'clock with this big, long agenda here, you would not get to me yet.
No.
And you must have just breezed through it.
Well, yeah, some of that stuff, we didn't even, like, there wasn't any amendments to the agenda. There wasn't an admin assistant item. There wasn't any.
Well,
public
I
comment.
didn't know
I know.
Usually done by
So you have
9:30
to
at
blame
the latest.
Dorothy for not
Are
bringing that.
Well, I will remember to get here from the start of the meeting next time, if I have to present.
There won't be a next time, Joni.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Take care. Yeah, I will. I will.
Because I see.
She's firecracker, wasn't she? You just never know.
So here we say 23 bells. Do I need to? take that out?
Oh, no, because that, oh. my God,
May I,
that's
sir?
like 7 volunteers.
Before we adjourn.
Yes, so if you have, I'll call for additional
Yes.
items.
Thank
Okay.
So my question is, gentlemen,
I knew
in
something.
your opinion,
Thank you.
Because we didn't have.
is this now public record?
20 mails.
So this, should this say?
I believe it is.
It is.
Well, we could
April?
say in April.
Okay.
I think that would be really
I told
Clear.
Yeah.
our interim clerk that
Okay.
we better have that
Okay, well,
conversation.
thank you.
No,
And I'm
I
so
I don't know how it
sorry.
can't be. I mean,
Yeah,
we didn't share it with the group, but it was brought up in the public.
We discussed it.
Got it.
They gave us a list.
I will send it on.
So that'll go,
And so the.
I'm assuming
they
that'll be
signed,
attached to her minutes from this meeting.
This thing that,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
They just should mail it off with the check.
anything else?
And they need the original.
Anything from you, sir?
Negative.
yeah.
Kelly might want the original.
Hearing nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting at 12:31 PM.
Deal.
We have 59 minutes to go eat lunch and come back for a Zoom meeting.